The night. A dead man walked into his own funeral. What would you do if you came home to hear your wife celebrating your death? Tonight, Adrian Voss, one of the most feared men in the underworld, will discover that the people closest to him have already carved up his empire like a Thanksgiving turkey. But there's one problem with their plan. He's not actually dead. This is a story about betrayal, revenge, and the housemaid who changed everything. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The rain hit the pavement like bullets. Adrian Voss sat in the back of an unmarked sedan 3 blocks from his estate, watching water stream down the window in thick rivulets that blurred the streetlights into halos of yellow. His driver, Marcus, a man who'd been with him for 8 years, kept glancing in the rearview mirror, waiting for the word to pull forward. Adrian didn't give it. Something felt wrong. Not wrong in the way a business deal goes south or a shipment gets intercepted. Wrong in the way your spine tingles right before someone pulls a trigger. He'd built his empire on instincts like these, the kind that separated men who died old from men who died surprised. "Boss?" Marcus's voice cut through the drum of rain on metal. "The meeting's in 10 minutes. Volkov doesn't like waiting." "Volkov can sit and spin," Adrian said, not taking his eyes off the mansion gates visible in the distance. Something's off. Off how? If I knew that, we'd already be moving. Adrian was 42, though people usually guessed younger until they looked at his eyes. Those eyes had seen things that aged a man in ways a calendar couldn't track. He'd killed his first person at 19, a rival's enforcer who'd gotten too comfortable making threats. By 25, he'd consolidated 3 territories. By 30, his name alone could make grown men reconsider their career choices. He wasn't a giant, 5'11", maybe 180, soaking wet. But he moved like violence was always one decision away, and people felt it. His dark hair was starting to show gray at the temples, which his wife Elena kept saying made him look distinguished. His wife Elena, who was supposed to be in Milan for a Fashion Week event. His wife Elena, whose private jet he was supposed to be on right now, sealing a deal with Dmitry Volkov that would expand their operations into Eastern Europe. Except Adrian had changed his plans 6 hours ago. The meeting location had shifted twice in the last 24 hours. The security detail Volkov proposed was too small for a deal this size. And Marcus had mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that Elena had called asking when Adrian would arrive, even though he'd told her himself that morning he was flying commercial. Small things. Threads that meant nothing alone. Together, they made a noose. "Take me around back," Adrian said. "The service entrance." Marcus's eyebrows rose. "The service entrance? Boss, that's—" "I know what it is. Do it." The sedan pulled away from the curb, headlights cutting through the downpour. They circled the estate's perimeter, past the main gates with their ornate ironwork, past the guardhouse where 2 of his men should have been stationed but weren't, and finally to a small access road that delivery trucks used. Adrian stepped out into the rain without an umbrella. The cold hit him immediately, soaking through his expensive suit in seconds. He didn't care. Being uncomfortable kept you sharp. The service entrance was hidden behind a utility shed, known only to a handful of people. Adrian had designed it himself after a close call 7 years back, when rivals had tried to box him in at his own home. He'd sworn then he'd never be trapped again. The biometric lock recognized his thumbprint. The door clicked open. Inside, the maintenance corridor was silent except for the hum of climate control systems. Adrian moved through the narrow passage, past storage rooms and electrical panels, his shoes squeaking on the polished concrete. The corridor connected to the main house through the kitchen's pantry, a door disguised as shelving that only opened from this side. He was reaching for the hidden latch when he heard footsteps. Adrian froze. His hand moved instinctively to the Glock tucked against his spine. The footsteps were light, hurried, accompanied by the rustle of fabric. Someone was running. The pantry door burst open. A woman stumbled through, eyes wide with panic. She saw Adrian and made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a scream, clapping both hands over her mouth to stifle it. Adrian had his gun out, pointed at her chest, before she could draw another breath. "Don't," he said quietly. She stood there, shaking. She was young, mid-20s maybe, wearing a simple black dress with a white apron. One of the housemaids, though Adrian didn't make a habit of memorizing their faces. Dark hair pulled back in a bun, a few strands loose and sticking to her damp forehead, brown eyes that were currently the size of dinner plates. "Mr. Voss?" she whispered. "You're not supposed to be here. It's my house." "No, I mean—" She glanced behind her toward the kitchen, then back at him. Her hands were trembling so badly she clasped them together. "You can't go in there. They'll kill you." Adrian's finger rested along the trigger guard, not on the trigger itself. Not yet. "Explain. Fast." "Your wife and Mr. Castellano. They're in the study with—" She swallowed hard. "They think you're dead. They're celebrating." The words hit him like a physical blow, but Adrian's expression didn't change. Couldn't change. He'd learned a long time ago that showing shock was the same as showing weakness. Castellano. The name came out flat. Vincent Castellano, his right hand for the last decade, the man who'd stood beside him through wars that left streets painted red, the man who was godfather to the daughter Adrian didn't have yet, but had always planned for. "You're sure?" "I heard them. They were toasting. Your wife said—" The maid's voice cracked. "She said the plane went down over the Atlantic. No survivors. They already have people moving your assets." Adrian lowered the gun, but didn't put it away. His mind was racing, slotting pieces together. The changed meeting location, Elena's questions, the missing guards. It wasn't paranoia if they were actually trying to kill you. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila. Lila Hart." "How long have you worked here, Lila Hart?" 6 months. And you decided to warn me instead of keeping your head down and collecting a paycheck from whoever takes over. Why?" Lila's jaw tightened. For just a second, something flashed in those frightened eyes, something harder than fear. "Because I know what it's like when people decide you're worth more dead than alive." Before Adrian could respond, voices echoed from deeper in the house. Male voices, moving closer. "Sweep the grounds again. He's paranoid as hell. If he somehow didn't get on that plane, he got on it." That was Vincent's voice, smooth as bourbon and twice as dangerous. "I watched the manifest myself. Adrian Voss is fish food." Adrian looked at Lila. She was still shaking, but she met his eyes and gave a tiny nod toward the corridor behind him. They moved. Adrian led this time, retracing his steps through the maintenance passage with Lila close behind. The voices faded as they put distance between themselves and the kitchen, but Adrian's mind was stuck on what he'd heard. Vincent's voice. No hesitation, no remorse. Just cold certainty that Adrian was dead. They reached the service exit. Rain was still hammering down outside, turning the world into a wall of water and noise. Adrian pushed the door open and stepped into the downpour, Lila following. "Where are we going?" she asked, having to shout over the rain. "Somewhere they won't look." "They have people everywhere, Mr. Voss. I've seen them. Security, staff, half the vendors who deliver here. They're all on someone's payroll now." Adrian didn't answer. He was already moving toward the tree line that bordered the estate's eastern edge. During construction, he'd insisted on leaving that section wild, untamed. The landscaper had argued it looked unfinished. Adrian had explained very calmly that aesthetics weren't the point. He'd wanted an escape route. The trees swallowed them, branches whipping in the wind, leaves dumping accumulated rainwater with every gust. Adrian's expensive leather shoes were ruined, his suit completely soaked through. Lila wasn't dressed any better for a midnight hike through the woods, but she kept pace without complaint. After 10 minutes of navigating by memory and occasional lightning flashes, they reached what looked like a drainage pipe jutting from an embankment. Adrian knelt beside it, fingers finding the hidden latch, and pulled. A section of the pipe swung open like a door. "Jesus," Lila breathed. "Paranoia pays dividends," Adrian said. "Get in." The tunnel beyond was concrete, barely tall enough to stand in, with LED strips along the floor providing dim blue light. Adrian had commissioned it 5 years ago through contractors who'd since retired to countries without extradition treaties. As far as he knew, only 3 people were aware it existed: himself, the architect who designed it, and the architect's widow, who'd received a very generous life insurance payout after a tragic accident. Adrian wasn't sentimental about loose ends. They walked for 20 minutes, the tunnel sloping downward before leveling out. It ran beneath the estate's property line, under a county road, and finally terminated in the basement of a commercial property Adrian owned through a shell company. a self-storage facility that had been operating at a loss for years. Nobody questioned a business losing money when the owner was rich enough not to care. The tunnel exit was hidden behind a false wall in one of the storage units. Adrian pushed through into a space containing exactly 3 items: a duffel bag, a prepaid cell phone, and a laptop in a waterproof case. He'd prepared for a lot of contingencies over the years. Being betrayed by his wife and best friend hadn't made the list, but the resources were the same either way. Lila stood in the doorway, dripping water onto concrete, looking at Adrian with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not fear anymore. Something else. Something calculating. "You planned for this," she said. "Not a question. I planned for everything except the people closest to me being the ones who'd pull the trigger." Adrian opened the duffel bag, found dry clothes, jeans, a black shirt, boots. He started changing, too focused to care about modesty. "How much did you hear?" "Enough. They have documents ready to divide your territories. Castellano takes the East Coast operations. Your wife gets the international connections and the legitimate businesses. Someone named Volkov gets the shipping infrastructure." "Dmitry Volkov." Adrian pulled on the dry shirt. "The man I was supposed to meet tonight. The meeting that kept getting moved around. They were going to kill you there too. Backup plan in case the plane didn't work." "The plane." Adrian stopped, his hands freezing on the buttons of his shirt. "Elena was supposed to be on that plane. She told me she was flying to Milan. She changed her plans yesterday. Said she had food poisoning." Adrian's laugh was short and bitter. "Food poisoning? That's almost insulting." He finished dressing, then pulled out the laptop and powered it on. While it booted, he looked at Lila properly for the first time since they'd entered the tunnel. She was still in her wet uniform, arms wrapped around herself for warmth, but she wasn't complaining. Wasn't asking questions, just watching him with those dark eyes that seemed to see more than a housemaid's eyes should. "You're not just a maid," Adrian said. Lila's expression didn't change. "No." "Who sent you?" "Nobody sent me. Not anymore." "That's not an answer." She took a breath, let it out slowly. "My father was Daniel Hart." The name hit Adrian like a punch. Daniel Hart, small-time operator who'd tried to muscle into Adrian's territory about 8 years back. It hadn't ended well for Daniel. Adrian had handled that situation personally, which was a polite way of saying Daniel Hart died screaming in a warehouse in Newark. "Your father made a choice," Adrian said carefully. "He knew the risks." "He made a stupid choice. I was 17. I watched from a car 2 blocks away while your people dragged him inside that warehouse." Lila's voice was steady, almost emotionless. "I heard the gunshots." Adrian's hand drifted toward his gun again. "So you came here for revenge?" "I came here because the people who took me in after my father died, the ones who fed me, trained me, gave me purpose, they wanted you dead. They spent years preparing me, teaching me how to blend in, how to wait, how to strike when the moment was right." She paused. "But then I spent 6 months in your house, Mr. Voss. I watched you. I learned things." "What things?" "That you're not the monster they said you were. That you have rules. That when your men screw up, you give them a chance to fix it before you bury them. That you don't hurt civilians. That you—" She stopped, shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Point is, I was supposed to help kill you tonight. I was supposed to make sure you walked into that study where they had 3 armed men waiting. Instead, I'm standing here in a secret tunnel telling you everything." "Why?" "Because the people who sent me, they don't have rules. They would have put a bullet in my head the second I stopped being useful. At least with you, I knew where I stood." Adrian studied her for a long moment. She could be lying, probably was lying, at least partially, but the raw honesty in her voice when she talked about her father, that was real. You couldn't fake that particular kind of pain. "You saved my life," he said finally. "That buys you something. We'll figure out what later." The laptop finished booting. Adrian pulled up a secure browser and started checking offshore accounts. The first 3 showed normal balances. The 4th was empty. So was the 5th. By the time he reached the 10th account, his jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. "They've been planning this for months," he said quietly. "Maybe longer. These accounts were set up through shell companies with multiple authentication layers. The only people who could access them were people you trusted, Were people I trusted, Adrian agreed. He pulled up another screen, this one showing a network of security cameras he'd installed at various properties. Most showed normal activity, but several, including the feed from his home office, had been disabled. He switched to the mansion's exterior cameras, the ones built into the gate system. The footage made his blood run cold. 2 black SUVs were parked in his circular driveway. Men in suits were unloading equipment, not weapons, but computers, file boxes, the infrastructure of a corporate takeover. One of them was laughing at something on his phone. Adrian zoomed in on the study windows. Through the glass, he could see figures moving. He recognized Vincent's profile, that distinctive Roman nose, the broad shoulders. His wife Elena stood beside him, wearing a red dress Adrian had bought her for their anniversary. She was smiling. She was never going to smile again. "Can you get me back in there?" Lila asked, moving to stand beside him. "Why?" "Because I know things. I was part of the staff for 6 months. I know schedules, blind spots in the camera coverage, which guards are loyal to whom. If you want revenge..." "I don't want revenge." Adrian closed the laptop. "Revenge is emotional. Revenge is what gets you killed. I want justice." "What's the difference?" "Justice is patient. Justice is precise. Revenge is a bullet to the head. Justice is watching them lose everything first, then putting them in the ground when they've got nothing left to lose." Lila was quiet for a moment. "That's cold." "I've been cold my whole life. It's why I'm still breathing." Adrian pulled out the prepaid phone and made a call. It rang 4 times before a gravelly voice answered. "Yeah? It's me." Silence. Then, "You're supposed to be dead. Rumors of my demise, etc. I need a place to stay, Marcus. Somewhere off the grid." "Boss, what the hell is going on?" "I'll explain when I see you. Right now, I need you to act like you believe I'm dead. Can you do that?" "I've been acting my whole life. Where do I meet you?" Adrian gave him the address of a motel 40 minutes away, the kind of place that rented by the hour and didn't ask for ID. 2 hours. Come alone." He hung up before Marcus could ask more questions. Lila was watching him. "You trust him?" "Marcus has been with me for 8 years. He saved my life 3 times. If he wanted me dead, he's had plenty of opportunities. Your wife was with you for 10 years. Castellano for longer. Trust is what got you here, Mr. Voss." She wasn't wrong. Adrian had built his empire on loyalty, on the belief that if you treated your people right, they'd stand with you when it mattered. Turned out loyalty had a price tag, and someone had met it. "From now on," he said, "call me Adrian. Mr. Voss is dead." They left the storage unit through the front entrance, just another couple leaving after retrieving their belongings. The rain had softened to a drizzle. Adrian's car, a nondescript Toyota he kept registered under a false name, was parked 3 spaces down. They drove in silence for the first 20 minutes. Lila sat in the passenger seat, still wearing her wet uniform, watching the city lights blur past the windows. Adrian kept checking the mirrors, looking for tails, seeing nothing but regular traffic. "What was it like?" Lila asked finally. "Building all of this? The empire, the power. Was it worth it?" Adrian didn't answer right away. He was thinking about the first man he'd killed, that enforcer who'd made threats. He was thinking about the wars he'd fought, the territories he'd claimed, the bodies he'd left behind. He was thinking about Elena, about their wedding day when she'd looked at him like he was the only person in the world who mattered. "You know what's funny?" he said. "I grew up with nothing. My old man was a drunk who couldn't hold a job. My mother worked 3 jobs trying to keep food on the table. I watched them break themselves for scraps. I swore I'd never be like that. I'd never be weak. So you became strong. I became ruthless. There's a difference. Strength is what you use to protect things. Ruthlessness is what you use to take them." He paused. "I built this empire because I wanted control. I wanted to be the person who made the decisions, who held the power. And for a while it worked. People feared me, respected me. I had money, influence, a wife who looked good on my arm at charity events. But fear isn't loyalty, and respect isn't love. I learned that tonight." They reached the motel, a sad collection of single-story buildings with peeling paint and a neon sign that buzzed like an angry wasp. Adrian parked around back, away from the main office. He paid cash for a room, using a fake ID that would hold up to casual inspection, but wouldn't survive serious scrutiny. The room was exactly what he expected. Thin carpet that had probably been brown once, now some indeterminate shade of gray. A bed with a comforter that smelled like cigarettes and regret. A TV bolted to the wall showing an infomercial for kitchen knives. Lila sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing herself to shiver. Adrian cranked the heat and tossed her a blanket from the closet. "There's a shower if you want to warm up," he said. "I need to make some calls." She disappeared into the bathroom. Adrian heard the water start running. He pulled out the prepaid phone and made another call. This one went to a number he hadn't used in 3 years, a contact he'd kept dormant in case of emergencies. The kind of contact who dealt in information that could end careers or start wars. "I need everything," Adrian said when the call connected. "Financial transactions, communications logs, security footage. I want to know when this started and who else is involved." "That's a tall order, especially on a rush job. I'll pay triple your usual rate." "Triple, huh? This must be personal." "It's business. Very personal business. Give me 48 hours. Adrian hung up. 48 hours. 2 days to figure out who was part of the conspiracy and who might still be salvageable. 2 days to plan his next move. The shower shut off. Lila emerged wearing one of the motel's robes, her hair loose and damp around her shoulders. Without the maid's uniform, she looked younger, more vulnerable, but her eyes still had that hardness he'd noticed earlier. "Who are you calling?" she asked. "People who can help." "You mean people you can still trust?" "I mean people whose self-interest aligns with mine. See, trust is a luxury I can't afford anymore." There was a knock at the door. Adrian drew his gun and moved to the side, gesturing for Lila to get down. She dropped behind the bed without hesitation. "Who is it?" "Marcus." Adrian checked the peephole. Sure enough, Marcus stood outside, alone, hands visible and empty. Adrian opened the door. Marcus stepped inside and froze when he saw Adrian's face. "Jesus Christ, boss, you really are alive." "Disappointed?" "What? No, Marcus ran a hand through his graying hair. "What the hell happened? I got a call 2 hours ago saying your plane went down. Elena was hysterical. Castellano was organizing recovery efforts." "I bet he was." Adrian closed the door, locked it. "The plane was sabotaged. I wasn't on it because my gut told me something was wrong. Turns out my gut was right." Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to anger. "Who?" "Elena, Vincent, probably half my inner circle." Adrian gestured to Lila, who stood up from behind the bed. "This is Lila. She warned me before I walked into an ambush." Marcus looked at her, then back at Adrian. "A maid warned you?" "It's a long story. Right now I need to know. Who can I trust?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Me. Tommy Chen, maybe. Your lawyer, Rothstein, but only because he's too scared to betray you. Everyone else." And he shook his head. "I don't know, boss. If Elena and Castellano are dirty, they've been working on this for a while. They could have flipped half your people." "Then we assume everyone's compromised until proven otherwise." Adrian moved to the window, peering through the curtains at the parking lot. "I need you to keep playing along. Act like I'm dead. Go to the funeral they're planning. Listen to what people say when they think nobody's watching. You want me to spy on your wife? I want you to get me ammunition. Names, conversations, anything that proves who's part of this and who's not. Can you do that?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Yeah, I can do that." "Good. What about my assets, the legitimate businesses?" "Elena moved fast. She's already filed paperwork claiming power of attorney. Said you'd given it to her before the trip, in case something happened." "That's a forgery." "Probably. But it's notarized, witnessed, the works. She had everything ready to go." Adrian felt his anger spike, hot and sharp. He tamped it down. Anger was useless. Anger got you killed. "What about the funeral?" he asked. "Day after tomorrow. Private ceremony, invitation only. Elena's handling the arrangements." "I bet she is." Adrian turned back to Marcus. "I want you there. I want eyes on everyone who shows up. Photos, if you can manage it." "Boss, if they think I'm compromised, they don't. You were with me tonight, remember? As far as they know, you were supposed to drive me to a meeting with Volkov. You're clean." Marcus nodded slowly. "All right. But after this, what's the play? You can't hide forever." "I'm not hiding. I'm planning. Adrian glanced at Lila, who was listening silently. They think they've won. They think I'm dead and buried and out of their way. That's an advantage. People get sloppy when they think they've already won. And when you're ready to move, then I'll remind them why they were afraid in the first place. Marcus left 20 minutes later, promising to report back after the funeral. Adrian watched him drive away, then closed the curtains and sat down on the bed beside Lila. "You realize this is insane, right?" she said. "Taking on your entire organization with basically no resources?" "I've been outgunned before. Not by people who know how you think, not by people who've studied your patterns for years." "You're right, which is why I'm not going to fight the way they expect." Adrian leaned back against the headboard. "They're expecting revenge. Quick, violent, emotional. I'm going to give them something else." "What?" "Patience. Fear. The slow realization that the man they thought they killed is still out there, watching, waiting. By the time I'm done, they'll be so paranoid they'll tear themselves apart." Lila studied him for a moment. "You're scarier than they said you were." "They don't know the half of it." The night stretched on. Adrian made more calls, reaching out to contacts who operated in the gray spaces between legal and criminal, hackers who could access secure systems, forgers who could create documents that would fool experts, muscle who owed him favors and were smart enough to keep their mouths shut. Lila watched him work, occasionally offering suggestions based on what she'd learned during her time embedded in his household. She knew which guards worked which shifts, which vendors made deliveries when, which rooms had the best camera angles and which had blind spots. "You were good at this," Adrian said after she rattled off security protocols from memory. "The infiltration. If you'd wanted me dead, I probably would be." "Maybe. Or maybe you're harder to kill than people think. Everyone dies eventually." "Yeah, but not everyone gets to choose how." Around 3 in the morning, exhaustion finally caught up with them both. Adrian took the chair by the window, his gun on his lap. Lila curled up on the bed, still wearing the motel robe. "Adrian?" she said quietly, just before sleep claimed her. "Yeah?" "What happens after? When this is all over?" "I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead." "Maybe you should." He didn't answer. Didn't know how to explain that there was no after for men like him. There was just the next fight, the next threat, the next betrayal waiting around the corner. You didn't retire from this life. You died in it, or you got lucky and died before it got to you. He thought he was lucky once, thought he'd built something lasting. Turned out he'd just built a prettier cage. Outside, the rain started again, drumming against the roof. The Proszę Adrian watched the parking lot, watched the shadows, waited for trouble that might not come tonight but would definitely come eventually. His phone buzzed. A text from his information broker. "Initial data incoming. You're not going to like it." Adrian opened the file. Financial records, phone logs, emails. Evidence of conspiracy stretching back 18 months. Meetings between Elena and Vincent that were never mentioned to him. Offshore accounts being drained slowly enough that he wouldn't notice. A web of lies so intricate it must have taken months to construct. And there, buried in the metadata of a deleted email, a name that made Adrian's blood turn to ice. His brother. Marcus Voss had been part of this from the beginning. Adrian looked at the chair across the room, still warm from where Marcus had been sitting an hour ago. Marcus, who'd saved his life 3 times. Marcus, who'd been with him for 8 years. Marcus, who'd looked him in the eye tonight and lied without hesitation. The evidence was clear. Financial transfers between Marcus and Vincent. Communications about the asset being moved into position, which, according to the timestamps, coincided with Lila's hiring as a maid. Marcus had been the one to recommend her, saying she came with good references. They'd all been playing him. Adrian's finger hovered over Marcus's number. 1 call, and he could confront him, demand answers, get his revenge. Instead, he deleted the message and put the phone down. Revenge was emotional, justice was patient, and Adrian Voss was nothing if not patient. He settled back in the chair, gun in his lap, and waited for morning. Somewhere out there, his wife and his best friend and his brother were celebrating his death. They were dividing his empire, spending his money, probably toasting to their brilliance. Let them celebrate. Let them think they'd won. When Adrian was done, there wouldn't be enough left of them to bury. Dawn came ugly and gray. The kind of morning that felt like the world hadn't quite committed to being awake yet. Adrian sat in the same chair he'd occupied all night, watching Lila sleep while his mind replayed the evidence he'd seen. Marcus, his own brother. The betrayal cut deeper than Elena's, deeper than Vincent's, because Marcus had been there from the start. Before the empire, before the money, when they were just two kids from Newark trying not to end up like their father. Leela stirred around 6, blinking against the weak light filtering through the curtains. She sat up slowly, running her fingers through her tangled hair, and noticed Adrian's expression. "You didn't sleep." "Couldn't." "Bad news?" "The worst kind. The kind that makes you question everything you thought you knew." Adrian stood, his joints stiff from sitting in one position all night. "Marcus is dirty." Lila's eyes widened. "Your driver? The one who was just here?" "My brother." She processed that for a moment. "Does he know you know?" "Not yet. And he's not going to until I'm ready." Adrian moved to the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face. In the mirror, he looked like hell. 2 days of stubble, circles under his eyes that could pass for bruises, hair sticking up in directions that defied physics. He looked like a man who died and hadn't quite figured out how to stop moving yet. When he came back out, Lila was standing by the window, peering carefully through the curtains. "We should move," she said. "Staying in one place too long is stupid." "Agreed. But first, I need to know something." Adrian sat on the edge of the bed, watching her. "The people who sent you, the ones who trained you to kill me, who are they?" Lila's hand tightened on the curtain. "Does it matter?" "It matters if they're part of this. If Elena and Vincent reached out to them, offered them a cut." "They didn't." She turned to face him. "The Maroney family wanted you dead for their own reasons. You remember Johnny Maroney?" Adrian remembered. 3 years ago, Johnny Maroney had tried to expand his drug operations into Adrian's territory. Adrian had responded by systematically dismantling Johnny's distribution network, burning his product, and sending 12 of his best dealers to the hospital. Johnny had backed off, but the Maroneys weren't the forgiving type. "They took you in after your father died?" "They gave me a choice. Work for them or end up in foster care with nothing. I was 17, angry, and stupid enough to think revenge would fix what was broken." Lila laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They trained me for 2 years, taught me how to fight, how to infiltrate, how to blend in. Then they spent another year getting me placed in your household. But you didn't go through with it. I told you last night. I watched you. You weren't what they said you were." "I'm exactly what they said I was, Lila. I've killed people, a lot of people, your father included." "I know, but you had reasons, rules. The men you killed were in the game. They knew the risks." She wrapped her arms around herself. "The Maroneys don't care about rules. They'd burn down a school if it meant making a point. When I realized that, when I saw the difference between you and them, I couldn't do it." Adrian studied her face, looking for the lie. He'd gotten good at spotting lies over the years. The little tells people had, the way their eyes moved, the tension in their shoulders. Lila showed none of that. Either she was telling the truth, or she was the best liar he'd ever met. "The Maroneys are going to be a problem," he said finally. "When they find out you didn't kill me, they'll come looking for you." "Let them. I've been ready for that since the moment I decided to warn you." They checked out of the motel 20 minutes later, paying cash and leaving no trace they'd been there. Adrian drove them to a storage facility across town, this one above board and registered under his lawyer's name. He had 6 units here, each containing different resources: cash, weapons, fake IDs, burner phones. The tools of a man who'd always known his empire might crumble. "How many of these do you have?" Lila asked as Adrian unlocked the 3rd unit. "Enough. When you build something from nothing, you never forget what it's like to have nothing. So you prepare." He pulled out a duffel bag, started loading it with essentials. 3 handguns, boxes of ammunition, 20,000 in cash, 4 different sets of identification papers. The men who last in this business aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who plan for the worst and hope for the best. "Sounds lonely." "It is." Adrian zipped the bag closed. "But loneliness is better than being dead." They drove to a diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where truckers stopped for coffee and nobody asked questions. Adrian ordered eggs and toast he didn't eat. Lila got pancakes and actually managed a few bites. "What's the plan?" she asked, pouring syrup she'd never touch. "The funeral's tomorrow. Marcus will be there playing the grieving brother. Elena playing the devastated widow. Vincent playing the loyal friend trying to hold everything together." Adrian sipped his coffee. It tasted like dirt and regret. "They'll all be in one place, surrounded by people I used to trust." "That's when we move." "Move how?" "I need to get into my office. The real office, not the one at the house. There are files there, hard copies of contracts and agreements that can't be digitally altered. Proof of who owes me what, who's made deals, who's vulnerable to pressure. They'll have changed the locks, probably stationed guards. Probably, but they can't change everything. Not in 48 hours. Adrian set down his coffee cup. "I designed that building, Lila. I know every entrance, every blind spot, every structural weakness. If I can get in during the funeral while everyone's distracted, I can grab what I need. And then what? Then I start pulling threads, finding out who's loyal, who's bought, and who's just scared. I rebuild from the people they overlooked, the ones they thought didn't matter." Lila was quiet for a moment, pushing pancake pieces around her plate. "You're talking about starting a war." "I'm talking about finishing one they started." "Same thing, isn't it?" Adrian didn't answer. Couldn't answer because she was right. War was war, no matter who threw the first punch. People would die. Some of them would deserve it. Some of them would just be in the wrong place at the wrong time, which was its own kind of deserving in this world. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, package delivered to usual location. Adrian threw money on the table and stood. "Let's go." The usual location was a parking garage downtown, 3rd level, northwest corner. Adrian had been using it for dead drops for years. He pulled into the spot, killed the engine, and waited. 2 minutes later, a teenage kid on a skateboard rolled past, dropped an envelope through the window, and disappeared without a word. Inside the envelope were photographs. Lots of them. The first showed Elena at a restaurant with Vincent, their heads close together, her hand on his arm. The timestamp said 3 months ago. The second showed them entering a hotel, different timestamp, 6 weeks ago. The third showed Vincent leaving that same hotel 2 hours later, adjusting his tie. "They were sleeping together," Lila said, looking over his shoulder. "They were planning together. The sex was just a bonus." Adrian flipped through more photos. Elena meeting with Dmitry Volkov at a coffee shop. Vincent having lunch with Marcus. A whole conspiracy laid out in glossy 8x10s. This has been going on for at least half a year, maybe longer. Why wait until now to make their move? Because until now, I was too careful, too paranoid. They needed me to let my guard down. Adrian found the photo he was looking for. Elena and Vincent with a man he didn't recognize, all three of them smiling at some kind of outdoor event. They needed a situation where my death would look accidental. A plane crash gives them that. No investigation, no questions, just a tragedy. Except you weren't on the plane. Except I wasn't on the plane. Adrian pulled out his phone, took pictures of the photographs, then tucked the originals in the duffel bag. Which means someone else was. Someone died in my place. That thought sat heavy in the car. Adrian had made a lot of enemies over the years, but he'd never been the kind of man who let innocent people die for him. Whoever had been on that plane, whoever had burned up over the Atlantic thinking they were about to land in New York, that was on him. Another body to add to the pile. They spent the rest of the day moving between safe locations, never staying anywhere longer than an hour. Adrian made calls, sent encrypted messages, started pulling together the pieces he'd need. A few of his contacts were willing to help. Others went straight to voicemail, which told him everything he needed to know about where their loyalties had shifted. By evening, he had a clearer picture. Out of his inner circle of 20 people, at least 12 were compromised. Vincent had been thorough, offering promotions, money, territories. Everyone had a price turned out. Even people Adrian had thought were solid. Tommy Chen was still loyal, though. Tommy, who ran his West Coast operations, hadn't returned any of Vincent's calls. Neither had Sarah Kim, who handled his legitimate real estate holdings. 2 people out of 20. Not great odds, but better than 0. "I need to reach out to them," Adrian said as they sat in yet another parking lot, this one behind a grocery store. "Tommy and Sarah. Warn them what's coming." "They could be playing both sides," Lila warned, "waiting to see who comes out on top. Tommy's been with me for 15 years. His daughter's medical bills, her treatments, I covered all of it. He's not the betraying type. Everyone's the betraying type if the price is right. You sound like someone who's been betrayed before. Lila looked out the window. My mother left when I was 6. Ran off with her boss, never looked back. My father drank himself stupid trying to forget her. And the Maronis, the people who raised me, they only cared as long as I was useful. So yeah, I know a little something about betrayal. Adrian recognized that bitterness. He'd carried his own version for years, ever since he realized his father was never going to be the man he needed him to be. Some wounds didn't heal. They just scarred over, and you learn to live with the ache. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. I'm still breathing. That's more than a lot of people can say. Night fell like a curtain. Adrian drove them to a motel on the other side of town. Different chain, different neighborhood. This one was slightly nicer, which meant the carpet was only mostly stained instead of completely ruined. He paid for 2 rooms this time. Lila needed privacy, and he needed to make calls he didn't want overheard. Get some rest, he told her as they stood in the parking lot, keys in hand. Tomorrow's going to be rough. I don't need rest. I need to know what you're planning. I told you, get into my office, grab the files. No, I mean after. After you have your evidence and your proof. What are you going to do with it? Adrian looked at her, really looked at her. She was young, maybe 25, 26. She'd spent years preparing to kill him, then threw it all away to save him instead. She had every reason to walk away from this mess, to disappear into whatever life people built when they left this world behind. But she was still here, still asking questions, still invested. I'm going to destroy them, he said quietly. Not just kill them, that's too easy. I'm going to take everything they stole from me and burn it in front of them. I'm going to make them watch while everything they plotted for falls apart. And when they're broken and desperate and begging for it to stop, then I'll put them down. Lila didn't flinch, didn't look away. That's darker than I expected. You wanted the truth. I did. And now I know why people are afraid of you. She turned toward her room, then paused. For what it's worth, I think your wife and Castellano deserve whatever you give them. But your brother? That's different. That's going to hurt you more than it hurts him. She was gone before Adrian could respond. He spent the next 3 hours in his room, pacing and planning. The funeral was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon at a private cemetery Elena had selected. Invitation only, which meant security would be tight, but focused on keeping outsiders out, not insiders in. Adrian's office building was 15 minutes away. He could make it there and back in under an hour if he moved fast. The problem was getting into the building without being seen. Vincent had probably posted guards, changed access codes, maybe even installed new cameras. Adrian would need a distraction. Something big enough to pull attention away from the building, but not so big it brought cops swarming. He was still working through possibilities when his phone rang. Tommy Chen's number. Tommy. Boss. Tommy's voice was tight, controlled. I heard about the plane. I'm sorry. Don't be. I wasn't on it. Silence. Then, say that again? I'm alive, Tommy. The crash was a setup. Elena and Vincent are trying to take over. More silence. Adrian could practically hear Tommy's mind working, slotting pieces together. Vincent called me yesterday, said he was consolidating operations, wanted me to report to him directly. I told him I'd think about it. Good. Keep stalling. I need you to do something for me. Name it. Tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock, I need a fire at the Richardson warehouse. Nothing huge, just enough to get the fire department involved. Can you make that happen? The Richardson warehouse is full of legitimate inventory, boss. That's a lot of money. I know, but I need the distraction more than I need the product. Can you do it? Yeah, I can do it. Tommy paused. What's the play here? I'm taking back what's mine. You with me? I've been with you for 15 years. I'm not stopping now. Adrian hung up and allowed himself a small smile. One ally confirmed, one piece moving into position. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He called Sarah Kim next. She answered on the first ring, her voice sharp and professional even at 11 at night. Mr. Voss? I was told you were dead. Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. I had my doubts. Your wife seemed too happy at the news. Sarah had never liked Elena. had made no secret of it. What do you need? I need you to liquidate some assets, quietly, properties we can convert to cash without raising flags. That'll take time. I know, but I need resources they can't freeze or redirect. Can you start the process? Already started it this morning. I didn't trust Vincent's story about you signing over power of attorney. The signature looked wrong. It was forged. Thought so. I've put holds on 3 major sales and redirected the trust funds into accounts Elena doesn't know about. You'll have access by tomorrow evening. Adrian felt tension he didn't know he'd been carrying release from his shoulders. Sarah, you're a miracle worker. I'm a lawyer who pays attention. There's a difference. She paused. Are you going to kill them? Eventually. Good. Make it hurt. She hung up before Adrian could respond. 2 allies. 2 people who hadn't been bought or turned or scared into submission. It was enough to work with. Not enough to win, not yet, but enough to make Vincent and Elena's victory a lot less certain than they thought. Adrian slept for 3 hours, restless and dreamless. When he woke, the sun was already climbing and his body felt like he'd gone 10 rounds with someone who knew how to throw a punch. He showered, dressed in black jeans and a dark shirt, and knocked on Lila's door. She answered wearing clothes she must have bought while he wasn't looking. Jeans, a leather jacket, boots that looked like they could do damage if needed. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and she'd found makeup somewhere, just enough to change her features slightly. She looked harder now, more dangerous. Ready? She asked. As I'll ever be. They grabbed coffee and breakfast sandwiches from a drive-thru, eating as they drove across town. The cemetery was in an old neighborhood, surrounded by trees that had probably been there longer than the city itself. Adrian parked 3 blocks away, in a grocery store lot where his car wouldn't stand out. The service starts at 2, he said, checking his watch. 1:45. Tommy's fire should start around 2:15, right when people are getting emotional and distracted. That's our window. And if something goes wrong, then we improvise. Adrian handed her a gun, a compact 9mm that would fit in her jacket. You know how to use this? The Maronis were thorough. Good. I don't think we'll need it, but better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Yeah, I know. Lila checked the magazine, chambered around, engaged the safety. Movement smooth and practiced, like she'd done it 1,000 times. What if we run into Marcus? We won't. He'll be at the funeral playing his part. But if we do? Adrian's jaw tightened. Then we deal with it. They walked toward the cemetery, staying to the side streets, avoiding cameras when possible. Adrian had mapped this route years ago, back when he'd been planning his own funeral hypothetically, figuring out where threats might come from. Ironic that he was using that same planning to crash his actual funeral now. The cemetery gates were closed, but Adrian knew about the service entrance on the north side, the one groundskeepers used to bring in equipment. The lock was old and easy to pick. They slipped inside, moving between headstones and monuments, staying low. From their position behind a large marble angel, Adrian could see the funeral setup. A crowd of maybe 50 people, all dressed in black, gathered around a closed casket. Elena stood at the front, wearing a black dress and veil, leaning against Vincent's arm. Marcus was beside them, head bowed, playing the devastated brother perfectly. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger, not yet. Just a deep, icy certainty that these people had made the worst mistake of their lives. He scanned the crowd, recognizing faces. Dmitry Volkov stood near the back, checking his phone. 3 of Adrian's former lieutenants clustered together, whispering. A dozen business associates who'd probably already started dividing up his legitimate operations. Everyone who'd betrayed him, gathered in one place. It was almost too perfect. There's your brother, Lila whispered, pointing. Marcus was moving toward Elena, saying something that made her nod. Then he stepped away from the crowd, pulling out his phone, walking toward the edge of the cemetery where the trees grew thick. He's making a call, Adrian said. Stay here. If anything happens, run for the car. What are you going to do? Something stupid. Adrian moved before Lila could stop him, circling wide through the trees, using every bit of cover available. He'd spent years learning how to move without being seen, how to be a ghost when he needed to be. Those skills came back now, muscle memory taking over. He reached the tree line just as Marcus finished his call. His brother stood with his back to Adrian, looking out at the funeral, and for a moment Adrian saw him as the kid he used to be. Marcus at 10, following Adrian around like a shadow. Marcus at 15, trying to be tough when their father came home drunk and mean. Marcus at 20, standing beside Adrian as they built their first legitimate business. All those memories, all those years of brotherhood, and Marcus had thrown it away for what? Money? Power? The chance to step out of Adrian's shadow? Adrian stepped out from behind a tree. "Hey, little brother." Marcus spun, his hand going for his gun, but froze when he saw Adrian's face. "No." The word came out strangled. "You're dead. The plane—" "I wasn't on the plane." "But you knew that was a possibility, didn't you? That's why Volkov was the backup plan." Marcus's face went through several expressions in quick succession. Shock. Fear. And finally, resignation. "How long have you known?" "Since last night. Financial records, phone logs. You've been coordinating this whole thing, haven't you? You brought in Lila, you arranged the meeting with Volkov, you made sure I'd be in the right place at the right time." "Adrian, listen. Don't." Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. "Don't try to explain it. Don't tell me you had your reasons or that you felt bad about it. You're my brother, the only real family I had left, and you sold me out." Marcus's hand dropped away from his gun. "You don't understand. You never understood. It was always about you, your empire, your reputation, your rules. The rest of us were just background characters in the Adrian Voss show." "So you decided to kill me?" "I decided to take what should have been mine from the start. Dad always said you were the smart one, the strong one. But what was I? The driver, the errand boy, the person nobody paid attention to." Marcus's voice rose. "I did just as much work as you did, bled just as much, risked just as much, but you got all the credit. Because I made the hard calls, I took the risks you were too scared to take. You took the glory I deserved." They stood there, two brothers divided by betrayal and ambition and all the weight of their shared history. Adrian wanted to be angry, wanted to feel rage burning through him like fire, but all he felt was tired. "The funeral's about to end," he said. "They're going to notice you're missing. You should get back." Marcus blinked. "You're not going to kill me?" "Not yet. First, I'm going to take everything from you, everything you schemed and plotted for. And when you have nothing left, when you're broken and desperate, then I'll decide if you're worth the bullet. Adrian, go." Marcus hesitated, then turned and walked back toward the funeral. Adrian watched him go, feeling something fundamental break inside his chest. Family was supposed to mean something. Supposed to be the thing that lasted when everything else failed. Turned out family was just another thing people sold when the price was right. He made his way back to where Lila was waiting. She took one look at his face and didn't ask questions, just fell into step beside him as they left the cemetery. 2:15 came and went. Adrian's phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Fire started. FD en route, right on schedule. They reached Adrian's office building 15 minutes later. It was a 15-story structure downtown, nice but not flashy, the kind of place that housed lawyers and accountants and businesses that preferred to avoid attention. Adrian's actual office was on the top floor, accessible only by a private elevator that required both a key and a code. The lobby had 2 guards now, where there used to be none. Vincent's edition. Adrian and Lila walked past the building once, mapping exits and security cameras, then circled around to the parking garage entrance. "Service elevator," Adrian said, pointing to a door marked maintenance only. "Takes you straight to the top floor. They might have changed the codes, but the override panel is the same." "How do you know?" "Because I'm the one who had it installed." The door was locked, but Lila made quick work of it with a pick set she produced from her jacket. Inside, the service corridor was empty, lit by flickering fluorescents that hummed like angry insects. They took the elevator up, Adrian entering the override code he'd memorized years ago. The doors opened onto the 15th floor. Adrian's office was at the end of the hall, past conference rooms and storage spaces that echoed with emptiness. He could see light under his office door. Someone was inside. He drew his gun and moved forward, Lila right behind him. The door was unlocked. Adrian pushed it open slowly. Vincent Castellano sat behind Adrian's desk, feet up, smoking a cigar that probably cost more than most people made in a week. He didn't look surprised to see Adrian. If anything, he looked amused. "Took you long enough," Vincent said. "I've been waiting all afternoon." Adrian's gun stayed level, pointed at Vincent's chest. His finger rested on the trigger, pressure building but not quite enough to fire. The office smelled like expensive tobacco and the faint chemical tang of cleaning products, like someone had scrubbed away evidence recently. "You knew I'd come," Adrian said. "Of course I knew. You're predictable when you're angry." Vincent took a long drag on the cigar, exhaled slowly. "The fire at Richardson Warehouse was a nice touch, by the way. Tommy's handiwork, I assume. He always was loyal to a fault. Tommy's smart enough to know which side wins." "Is he? Because from where I'm sitting, you're a dead man with a gun, standing in an office that doesn't belong to you anymore. That's not winning, Adrian. That's desperation." Lila moved to Adrian's left, her own weapon drawn, creating a crossfire. Vincent's eyes flicked to her, recognition dawning. "The maid. I knew there was something off about you. Marcus said you came with perfect references, but I should have dug deeper." Vincent smiled, and it was the smile of a man who thought he'd already won. "The Maronis sent you, didn't they? How much did they pay you to switch sides?" "Nobody paid me anything," Lila said. "I make my own choices." "Right. And you chose to save a man who killed your father. That's either incredibly stupid or incredibly calculating. I can't decide which." "Enough talking." Adrian took a step forward. "Where are the files?" "Which files? The ones documenting every shady deal you've made for the last 20 years? The ones that prove you've been laundering money through shell corporations? Those files?" Vincent gestured at the office around them. "They're in a safe place, multiple safe places, actually." Elena insisted on redundancy. "Elena doesn't know half of what's in those files." "She knows enough. She knows about the offshore accounts, the fake businesses, the bodies you buried when they became inconvenient. She knows you're not the legitimate businessman you pretend to be at charity galas." Vincent's expression hardened. "She knows you're a killer who got lucky and bought some nice suits." Adrian felt his anger spike, hot and sharp, but kept his voice level. "And what does that make you, Vincent? You've been beside me for every decision, every deal, every body. You're just as dirty as I am. The difference is I'm smart enough to see when it's time to cash out. This life, this empire you built, it's got an expiration date. The FBI's been circling for months. The Russians are expanding. The cartels are pushing north. You're going to end up dead or in prison, and I'm not interested in either option. So you decided to kill me first. I decided to survive. Elena wanted out too. She's been miserable for years, playing the dutiful wife while you treated her like furniture. When she came to me 6 months ago, said she wanted to leave, take half of everything and disappear, I saw an opportunity. An opportunity to betray the man who made you." Vincent laughed, short and bitter. "You didn't make me, Adrian. You needed me. There's a difference. Every territory you took, I planned it. Every negotiation you won, I set it up. You were the face, the enforcer, but I was the brain, and I got tired of being the brain while you took all the credit." It was almost word for word what Marcus had said. Adrian wondered if they'd rehearsed it or if resentment just made people sound the same. "Where's Elena now?" Adrian asked. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll never find her. She was at the funeral an hour ago." Vincent's smile faltered slightly. "You were there, watching you all play grieving while you carved up my empire. Very touching performance, by the way. I almost believed Marcus actually gave a damn I was dead. Marcus is a follower, always has been. He'll fall in line with whoever's in charge. Is that what you think? That he's just along for the ride?" Adrian lowered his gun slightly, just enough to seem like he was relaxing. "Marcus has been playing you from the start, Vincent. He's the one who coordinated everything. The plane, the meeting with Volkov, even getting Lila placed in my household. You think you're running this coup, but you're just another piece on his board." Vincent's expression changed. Not much, just a flicker of doubt that crossed his face before he could hide it. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Check the financial transfers. Check who's been communicating with Volkov directly. Check who benefits most when both you and I are out of the picture." Adrian watched Vincent's face, saw the calculations happening behind his eyes. "Marcus lets you think you're in charge because that's what smart people do. They let the violent ones take the risk while they stay safely in the background. Even if that were true, it doesn't change your situation. You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and out of time. Maybe, but I'm not out of options. Adrian raised his gun again, and this time he aimed at Vincent's knee. Last chance. Where are the files? Vincent's hand moved toward his desk drawer. Lila fired before he could complete the motion, her shot splintering the wood inches from his fingers. Hands where we can see them, she said calmly. Vincent raised both hands slowly. You really think killing me solves anything? I've got insurance, evidence stored with lawyers, journalists, federal agents. You put a bullet in me and everything comes out. Your whole empire gets exposed. I don't need to kill you, Adrian said. I just need you scared enough to make mistakes. He moved around the desk, gun still trained on Vincent, and opened the drawer Lila had just shot. Inside was a revolver, loaded, safety off. Adrian removed it, ejected the bullets, tossed the empty gun across the room. Stand up, slowly. Vincent stood, hands still raised. He was bigger than Adrian, broader through the shoulders, with the kind of size that came from good genetics rather than gym work. They'd fought side by side for years, knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. Vincent was stronger, but Adrian was faster, always had been. Against the wall, Adrian ordered. Vincent complied, spreading his hands against the window that looked out over the city. Adrian patted him down, found a cell phone, a wallet, and a small knife tucked into an ankle holster. He took all three. Lila, check the safe. The safe was behind a painting of a sailing ship because Adrian had never claimed to be original. Lila pulled the painting aside and examined the electronic lock. I'll need time to crack this, she said. We don't have time. Vincent, combination. Go to hell. Adrian pressed his gun against the back of Vincent's knee. I can make this very painful, very quickly, or you can give me the combination and walk away with both legs working. Your choice. Vincent's jaw tightened. For a long moment, Adrian thought he'd have to follow through on the threat. Then Vincent rattled off 6 numbers. Lila entered them. The safe clicked open. Inside were file folders, USB drives, and stacks of cash bound with rubber bands. Lila started pulling everything out, stuffing it into a bag she'd brought. There's more, Vincent said. Other locations. You'll never get all of it. I don't need all of it. Just enough to prove what you've been doing. Adrian stepped back, keeping the gun trained. Who else is in on this, besides Elena and Marcus? Why would I tell you? Because right now, you're useful to me alive. That can change very quickly. Vincent turned his head slightly, looking at Adrian over his shoulder. You're not going to kill me. You need me to testify, to give you leverage against the others. You kill me, and you lose that. I could shoot you somewhere non-lethal, somewhere that hurts like hell but keeps you breathing. I've gotten very good at that over the years. You won't. You're too controlled for that, too precise. That's always been your weakness, Adrian. You think everything through, plan for every contingency. But sometimes the world doesn't follow your plan. As if on cue, the office door burst open. 4 men rushed in, guns drawn. Adrian recognized 2 of them, former members of his security detail. The other 2 were unfamiliar, probably Vincent's personal muscle. They spread out quickly, professional, creating a perimeter that boxed Adrian and Lila in. Vincent smiled. Like I said, sometimes the world doesn't follow your plan. Adrian didn't lower his gun, neither did Lila. They stood back to back now, covering different angles, outnumbered 2 to 1. How did you know we were here? Adrian asked. I didn't, but I know you, and I know how you think. I've been watching your patterns for 10 years. You needed these files, which meant you'd come for them. So I waited. Vincent straightened, adjusting his tie like they were at a business meeting instead of a standoff. The question now is whether you're smart enough to surrender or stupid enough to fight. I've never been good at surrendering. Then you're going to die in your own office. Poetic, I suppose. Adrian's mind raced through options. 4 armed men, all with clear lines of fire. The door was blocked. The windows didn't open. Even if they did, 15 stories was a long drop. Fighting would get them killed. Surrendering would definitely get them killed, just slower. That left improvisation. Lila? Adrian said quietly. The sprinklers. She understood immediately. Her gun swung up and fired 3 shots into the ceiling, hitting the sprinkler heads directly above Vincent's guards. Water exploded downward, drenching everyone, creating chaos. Adrian moved while they were distracted, closing the distance to the nearest guard and driving his elbow into the man's throat. The guard went down gagging. Adrian took his gun, fired twice at the second guard, catching him in the shoulder and chest. Lila was already engaging the third guard, her movements smooth and practiced. She ducked under his arm, swept his legs, and put 2 bullets in his chest before he hit the ground. The fourth guard had better instincts. He'd backed toward the door, using cover, and his shots were more accurate. A bullet whined past Adrian's ear. Another punched through the bag Lila was carrying, scattering papers. Adrian returned fire, forcing the guard to duck. In that moment of cover, Lila sprinted forward and tackled him. They went down together, struggling for control of his weapon. A shot went wild, shattering the window behind Adrian's desk. Adrian turned to find Vincent, but Vincent was already moving, heading for the broken window. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, smashed out the remaining glass, and before Adrian could stop him, stepped through. For a horrifying second, Adrian thought Vincent had jumped. Then he saw the emergency ladder, the kind installed on older buildings that ran down the exterior wall. Vincent was climbing down, disappearing into the rain that had started falling again. Damn it! Adrian ran to the window, looked down. Vincent was already 2 floors below, moving fast. Adrian could shoot him, probably hit him, but a fall from this height would kill him. And dead men couldn't talk. Behind him, Lila grunted. He turned to see her standing over the fourth guard, breathing hard, blood on her knuckles. The guard wasn't moving. Is he unconscious? I think. She kicked his gun away. We need to move. Those gunshots are going to bring building security. Adrian grabbed the bag of files, now soaked from the sprinklers and missing some papers, but still containing the USB drives and most of the critical documents. They ran for the service elevator, water still cascading from the ceiling, alarms starting to wail. The elevator doors opened just as they heard voices from the main hallway. Building security, probably, or more of Vincent's people. Adrian jammed the button for the parking garage, and the doors slid closed. That went well, Lila said, wiping water from her face. We're alive. That's better than some outcomes. Is it? Because Vincent got away, we're soaking wet, and we just shot up your office. I'm not sure what we accomplished except making a mess. We got the files. That's what matters. The elevator reached the parking garage. They stepped out into dim fluorescent light and the smell of oil and exhaust. Adrian's car was 3 levels down, but they'd have to move fast. By now, Vincent would have called for reinforcements. They were halfway to the car when Adrian's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered anyway. Yeah. Adrian. Elena's voice, smooth as silk and twice as deadly. Vincent just called, said you interrupted his afternoon. Your boyfriend and I had a conversation. He's not my boyfriend. He's a business partner. Is that what you tell yourself? Makes the betrayal easier to swallow? Elena laughed, and it was the laugh he remembered from better days, when they'd been young and stupid and thought love could survive in a world like this. You think I betrayed you because of Vincent? You really are blind. Then enlighten me. I betrayed you because you made me into something I'm not. When we met, I was a law student with plans and dreams. You turned me into a trophy wife who smiled at criminals and pretended not to know where the money came from. You turned me into an accessory. You knew what I was when you married me. I knew what you showed me, the charming businessman with the dangerous edge. I didn't know about the bodies. I didn't know about the extent of it until it was too late to leave without ending up dead myself. Her voice hardened. So I decided if I couldn't leave, I'd take everything and bury you with it. Adrian reached the car, unlocked it. Lila slid into the passenger seat, her gun still drawn, watching the garage entrance. You could have just divorced me, Adrian said, starting the engine. And given up half? Why settle for half when I could have it all? Elena paused. Vincent's heading to the secondary location now. You won't find him, and you won't find me. But I wanted you to know before this ends that I don't hate you. I just don't love you enough to be poor. Money. This was all about money. Money is freedom, Adrian. You of all people should understand that. She hung up before he could respond. Adrian drove out of the parking garage into rain that was coming down harder now, turning the streets into rivers. His phone rang again immediately. This time it was Tommy. Boss, we've got a problem. The fire at Richardson brought more attention than we expected. Fire marshals asking questions, and there are federal agents on scene. Federal agents? How fast did they respond? Too fast. Like they were already watching the place. Adrian's stomach dropped. Get out of there, Tommy. Right now. Don't answer questions. Don't stick around. Just leave. What about the crew? Tell them to scatter. We'll regroup later. He hung up and pulled over on a side street, engine idling, rain hammering the roof. What's wrong? Lila asked. The feds were already watching Richardson Warehouse, which means they've been investigating me for longer than I thought. Which means Vincent was right about one thing. This empire has an expiration date, and we're past it. Adrian pulled out the USB drives they'd recovered from the safe, examined them. 4 drives, each labeled with different years. Financial records, probably. Communications, evidence that could hang him or save him, depending on what they contained. We need a computer, he said. Somewhere secure, somewhere they won't think to look. I know a place, Lila said. Old Maroney's safe house. They abandoned it 2 years ago after a raid, but the building's still standing. Power's still on. The Maroneys would kill you on sight. They have to find me first. Adrian pulled back into traffic, following Lila's directions to a neighborhood he didn't know well. Industrial area, mostly warehouses and distribution centers, the kind of place where people minded their business and cops didn't patrol often. The safe house was a 2-story brick building sandwiched between a defunct textile factory and a chop shop. Looked abandoned from the outside, which was probably the point. Lila produced a key from somewhere in her jacket, and they slipped inside. The interior was dusty but intact, furniture still in place, kitchen that looked functional, and most importantly, a computer set up in what had probably been a bedroom once. Old equipment, but it would work. Adrian booted up the computer while Lila checked the windows, making sure they weren't being watched. The USB drives loaded slowly, files appearing one by one. What he saw made his blood run cold. The first drive contained financial records, like he'd expected, but they weren't just his records. They were communications between Elena and federal prosecutors dated back 8 months. Immunity agreements, witness protection offers. She hadn't just planned to steal his empire, she'd planned to sell him out to the government. She's been working with the FBI, Adrian said. This whole time she's been building a case. Lila moved to look over his shoulder. Can they make it stick? With this evidence? Yeah, they can make it stick. Adrian scrolled through emails, transcripts of recorded conversations, financial trails that led directly back to him. She's been wearing a wire. Some of these recordings are from our bedroom, our private conversations. How long? At least 6 months. Maybe longer. Adrian felt something brittle crack inside him. The betrayal was one thing. The calculated nature of it, the patience required to smile and lie, and record him for months while planning his destruction, that was something else entirely. The second USB drive contained security footage, not from his properties, from everywhere. Vincent's operations, Marcus's meetings, Volkov's warehouses. Elena had been gathering evidence on everyone, building leverage. She's playing all sides, Lila said. Give the feds enough to take you down. Keep the rest for insurance against Vincent and the others. She's smarter than I gave her credit for. The third drive was financial projections. Spreadsheets showing how Adrian's territories and assets would be divided after his death or arrest. Vincent got the East Coast operations, like Lila had overheard. Marcus got the West Coast and the international shipping. Elena kept the legitimate businesses and walked away with immunity. And Volkov got everything else. They're selling you out to the Russians, Lila said. That's the real play. Volkov's been trying to expand into your territory for years. Vincent's giving it to him in exchange for what? Protection? A cut? Adrian opened the fourth drive. This one was different. No spreadsheets or recordings, just a single document titled Insurance Policy. He opened it. Inside was a list of names. Judges, prosecutors, police chiefs, federal agents. Beside each name was a dollar amount and a note about what they'd been paid for. Evidence suppression, case dismissals, advance warning of raids. Elena had documentation on every corrupt official Adrian had ever paid off. This is how she bought her immunity, Adrian said. She gave them bigger fish, corrupt cops and prosecutors they could prosecute to make themselves look good. How many people on this list? 37. Adrian scrolled through, seeing names he recognized. Some he'd worked with for years, Others were surprises, people he thought were clean. If this gets out, it brings down half the law enforcement infrastructure in 3 states. Which means the feds want it kept quiet. Which means Elena has leverage to negotiate. Adrian sat back in the chair, staring at the screen. He'd built his empire carefully, methodically, paying off the right people, making strategic alliances. And Elena had documented all of it, turned his own success into the weapon that would destroy him. She's untouchable, he said quietly. As long as she has these files, as long as the feds need her testimony, we can't touch her. Everyone's touchable. You just have to find the right pressure point. Adrian looked at Lila. What would your pressure point be? If someone wanted to make you vulnerable, what would they threaten? She didn't hesitate. Nothing. I don't have anything left to lose. That's why I'm dangerous. Everyone has something, family, friends, a future they want to protect. I told you, my family's dead. I don't have friends. And my future's been borrowed time since I was 17. Lila's expression was hard. But Elena's different. She's doing this for money, for freedom. She wants a life after this. That means she has plans, dreams, things she's looking forward to. So we find out what those plans are and destroy them. Or we make her think we will. Fear's just as effective as action. Adrian copied the files to a separate drive, creating backups. Evidence this valuable needed to be stored in multiple locations, encrypted, safe from seizure. He was about to shut down the computer when something caught his eye. A 5th folder, hidden in the directory structure. No label, just random characters. He opened it. Inside were photographs. Recent ones, judging by the digital timestamps. Elena meeting with a man Adrian didn't recognize. Young, maybe 30, well-dressed. They were at a restaurant, then walking on a beach, then getting into a car together. More photos. The same man entering an apartment building, Elena entering 10 minutes later, both leaving 2 hours after that. She has a boyfriend, Lila said. A real one, not Vincent. Adrian zoomed in on one of the photos, studying the man's face. Sharp features, expensive watch, confidence in the way he stood. Not muscle, not a criminal. Someone from Elena's other life, the one she wanted to escape to. Who is he? Lila pointed at a sign visible in one photo's background. That's a law firm. Morrison, Chen and Associates. Downtown, high-end clients. A lawyer. Makes sense. She'd want legal advice from someone she could trust, someone who wasn't part of your world. Adrian felt a smile start to form. Not a pleasant smile. The kind of smile that meant someone's day was about to get much worse. Find out everything about him, Adrian said. Name, address, family, debts, secrets, everything. What are you planning? Elena thinks she's safe because she has immunity and leverage, but immunity doesn't cover the people around her, and leverage only works if you're willing to use it. His phone rang. Marcus this time. Adrian almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail, cut his brother off completely, but information was currency, and he needed to know what Marcus was thinking. What? We need to talk, Marcus said. His voice was strained, none of the confidence from the cemetery. Face to face. So you can finish what you started? So I can tell you the truth about Vincent, about Elena, about all of it. Marcus paused. I know you won't believe me, but I'm trying to keep you alive. Interesting claim from the man who tried to blow me up. The plane wasn't my idea. That was Vincent. I argued against it, said it was too risky, too many variables. He pushed it through anyway. And the meeting with Volkov? The one where I was supposed to die. That was mine, Marcus admitted. But I set it up so you'd get suspicious, so you'd see through it and not go. I was buying time. Time for what? To figure out how to stop this without getting both of us killed. Vincent's out of control, Adrian. He's making deals with people who'll turn on him the second it's convenient, and Elena's playing games with the feds that are going to blow back on everyone. So you want me to clean up your mess? I want us to survive, both of us. Marcus's voice dropped lower. I know I screwed up. I know I betrayed you, but we're still brothers. That has to count for something. Adrian looked at Lila, who was watching him carefully. She shook her head slightly. Don't trust him. Where do you want to meet? Adrian asked. The old pier, Pier 47, South End. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Come alone. I'm not coming alone. Then bring whoever you want. but we need to talk before this gets worse. Marcus hung up. Lila crossed her arms. That's a trap. Probably, but Marcus made a point. We need to know what Vincent's planning next, and Marcus might actually tell us. Or he might put a bullet in your head. That's why I'm not going alone. Adrian started shutting down the computer, pocketing the USB drives. I need you to reach out to the Maronis. What? No, they'll kill me. Not if you're offering them something they want more. Vincent's expansion plans include their territory. The Russians moving in threatens them. If they're smart, they'll work with us to stop it. And if they're not smart, then we find another option. But right now, enemies of my enemies are the closest thing I have to allies. They spent the rest of the night planning. Lila made calls, reaching out to old contacts, testing the waters with the Maronis. Adrian worked the angles, figuring out how to play Marcus, how to pressure Elena, how to turn Vincent's own paranoia against him. By 3 a.m., they had the outline of a strategy. Not a good strategy, not one with great odds, but better than nothing. This is insane, Lila said, slumped in a chair, exhaustion written across her face. We're going up against your wife, your best friend, your brother, the Russian mob, and probably the FBI. With what? A few USB drives and a prayer? I've won with less. When? Adrian thought about that. Tried to remember a time when he'd been this outgunned, this isolated, this close to complete destruction. Couldn't find one. There's a first time for everything, he said. Lila laughed, sharp and bitter. We're going to die. Probably, but we're taking them with us. Dawn came slowly, gray light creeping through dirty windows. Adrian and Lila drove to Pier 47 in silence, both armed, both knowing this could go wrong in about 100 different ways. The pier was abandoned, a relic from when the city had been a major shipping hub. Now it was just rusted metal and rotting wood, a place where homeless people slept and drug deals happened when nobody was watching. Marcus was waiting at the far end, hands in his pockets, looking out at the water. He was alone, as far as Adrian could see. But snipers were a thing, and Marcus knew how to plan an ambush. Stay here, Adrian told Lila. If shooting starts, run. Not a chance. Lila, you don't get to play hero and die dramatically. We're in this together now. They approached Marcus together, guns drawn but not raised. Marcus turned when he heard footsteps, and for a moment he looked so much like their father it hurt. Same tired eyes, same defeated posture, same look of a man who'd made too many wrong choices and couldn't find his way back. Thanks for coming, Marcus said. Talk fast, my patience is running thin. Vincent's planning to kill you at your own funeral. The memorial service tomorrow, the public one. He's got shooters positioned, explosives rigged. You show up, you die. Why would I show up to my own funeral? Because Elena's going to announce she's pregnant. Your child. She's going to cry, play the grieving widow carrying your legacy. It'll be all over the news. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed Adrian a press release draft. You won't be able to resist. You'll want to see her, confront her. And when you do, Vincent ends it. Adrian read the press release. Elena's announcement, perfectly crafted to pull his strings, to make him react emotionally instead of strategically. She's not pregnant, Adrian said. Doesn't matter if it's true. Matters if people believe it. Marcus pocketed his phone. I'm telling you this because I don't want you walking into that. Because despite everything, I still give a damn if you live or die. How touching. Tell me, little brother, when did you start caring? Before or after you helped them plan my murder? Marcus's jaw tightened. I never wanted you dead. I wanted what was mine. There's a difference. No, there really isn't. Fine. Believe what you want. But I'm giving you a way out. Don't go to the funeral. Stay hidden. Let Vincent think he won. Then, when he's comfortable, when his guard's down, you make your move. And what do you get out of this? Survival. Vincent's paranoid. He's already asking questions about my loyalty. If I'm not useful, I'm a liability. And Vincent deals with liabilities permanently. Lila spoke up. How do we know you're not feeding us false information, sending us into a different trap? You don't. But ask yourself this. If I wanted Adrian dead, why am I here having this conversation instead of just letting him walk into Vincent's plan? Marcus looked at Adrian. I screwed up. I let ambition make me stupid, but I'm trying to fix it before we all end up dead. Adrian wanted to believe him, wanted to think his brother was still in there somewhere, beneath the betrayal and ambition. But trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. "I'll think about it," Adrian said. "Don't think too long. The funeral's tomorrow afternoon." They left Marcus standing on the pier, watching them go. Adrian didn't look back, couldn't afford to let himself feel whatever emotion was trying to claw its way up from his chest. "Do you believe him?" Lila asked once they were back in the car. "I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks he's setting us up for something worse. So what do we do?" Adrian started the engine, pulled away from the pier. The sun was rising now, burning off the morning fog, turning the city into something almost beautiful. "We do what we always do," he said. "We plan for the worst and hope we're wrong." They drove to a different safe house, this one owned through a shell company so deeply buried that even Adrian sometimes forgot which layer of ownership it existed under. A converted warehouse and an area gentrification had touched but not conquered, sandwiched between a yoga studio that would be bankrupt in 6 months and a bodega that had been there since the 70s. Adrian's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News alerts, all carrying the same headline in different variations. Business mogul's widow announces pregnancy. Elena Voss carrying late husband's child. Tragedy compounds as widow reveals she's expecting. He threw the phone on the table harder than necessary. "She moved fast," Lila said, reading over his shoulder before he'd tossed it. "Press release went out an hour ago. She's already done 2 interviews." "Of course she has. Strike while people are emotional before anyone starts asking questions." Adrian paced the length of the warehouse, his footsteps echoing off concrete. "She's not pregnant. Can't be. We haven't slept in the same room in 8 months. Doesn't matter if it's true. By the time anyone proves otherwise, she'll have control of your assets, public sympathy, and probably a book deal." Adrian stopped pacing. "We need to hit back, hard, before the funeral tomorrow." "Hit back how? We're 2 people with some USB drives. She's got the FBI, the media, and public opinion." Then we changed the narrative. Adrian pulled out his laptop, started typing. "Elena wants to play the grieving widow. Fine. Let's show people who she really is. You're going to leak the files? Selected files. The ones showing her immunity deal, her cooperation with federal prosecutors. Make it look like she sold out her husband to save herself." Lila frowned. "That could work, but it also exposes you. Those files contain evidence of your crimes too. I'm already dead, remember? Can't prosecute a corpse, but Elena's very much alive and claiming to be the heartbroken widow. When people find out she was building a case against me while warming my bed, the sympathy evaporates. The FBI won't like it. They'll come after whoever leaked it. Let them. By the time they figure out it was me, I'll have bigger problems, or I'll be actually dead." Adrian pulled up an anonymous file-sharing site, started uploading documents. "We release this in 2 hours, gives it time to spread before the funeral tomorrow." Elena shows up expecting sympathy, walks into a firestorm instead. While the files uploaded, Adrian made calls. First to Tommy, who confirmed he'd gotten clear of the Richardson warehouse before the feds started making arrests. Then to Sarah, who reported that she'd successfully moved $18 million into accounts Elena didn't know existed. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. The third call was to a number he hadn't used in 5 years. It rang 6 times before someone answered. "Maroney residence? I need to speak with Carlo." "Who's calling?" "Tell him it's Adrian Voss. Tell him I have information about Vincent Castellano's deal with Dmitry Volkov. Tell him it affects his territory." The line went quiet. Adrian could hear muffled conversation, then footsteps. A minute passed. Then a voice he recognized, rougher than he remembered but unmistakably Carlo Maroney. "You've got balls calling me Voss? After what you did to my operations 3 years ago." "Business is business, Carlo. You made a move," I countered. "No hard feelings." "I've got plenty of hard feelings, but I'm listening. What's this about Volkov?" "Vincent's making a deal, trading my territories for Russian protection and a cut of their expansion. That expansion includes moving into your waterfront operations. The docks you've controlled for 20 years? Volkov wants them, and Vincent's giving him the infrastructure to take them." Silence on the other end. Adrian could practically hear Carlo's mind working through the implications. "Why should I believe you?" "Because I'm sending you proof right now." Adrian nodded at Lila, who forwarded files from the USB drives. Financial projections, meeting transcripts, the whole plan. Vincent thinks you're weak enough to push out, are you? Watch your mouth, Voss. Then prove me wrong. Work with me to stop this before Volkov's people are unloading cargo at your docks. Work with you. The man who killed Johnny. You really think I'd partner with you? Johnny made his own choices, and your niece, Lila, she's made hers too. She's standing right here, by the way. Want to talk to her? Adrian handed the phone to Lila. She took it reluctantly, her expression unreadable. Uncle Carlo. Lila. Carlo's voice shifted, some of the hardness bleeding out. We thought you were dead. After you disappeared, after we couldn't find you, I was working, the job you sent me on. That job was 2 years ago. You were supposed to check in monthly. Plans changed. I'll explain later. Right now, Adrian's telling the truth about Volkov. I've seen the documents. If you don't move against this, you'll lose everything. Another pause. You trust him. More than I trust Vincent or the Russians. That's enough for now. Put him back on. Lila handed the phone back. Adrian could hear something in Carlo's breathing, the sound of a man making a decision he didn't like but couldn't avoid. What do you want from me? Carlo asked. Manpower, resources, a show of force at tomorrow's funeral that makes Vincent rethink his position. You want me to crash your funeral? I want you to remind everyone that this city has rules. Vincent's breaking them. He needs to face consequences. And what do I get? Volkov's expansion plans stop. Vincent's territory gets redistributed in a way that benefits you, and you get your niece back alive. Adrian glanced at Lila. I'm assuming you want that. Depends on whether she's really my niece anymore or if you've turned her into something else. I'm still me, Lila said, loud enough for the phone to pick up, just with better perspective. Carlo sighed, long and heavy. Fine, we'll be there. But Voss, if this is a setup, if you're playing me, I'll make sure your second death is a lot more painful than your first. Understood. The line went dead. Lila sat down hard in a folding chair. I can't believe you just did that. You said the Maronis wanted you dead. They do. They will. But family's complicated. Carlo raised me after my father died. He was the closest thing to a parent I had. She ran her hands through her hair. This doesn't mean he forgives me. It means he's using me. Welcome to my world. Everyone's using everyone. The trick is making sure you're getting something out of it too. The file upload completed. Adrian checked it twice, made sure everything was clean, then posted the link to 3 different journalists he knew wouldn't be able to resist a story this big. Exclusive. Elena Voss's secret deal with federal prosecutors. By morning, it would be everywhere. Now what? Lila asked. Now we prepare for tomorrow. The funeral's at 2 p.m. Vincent will have his shooters in position by 1. We need to be there earlier, scope the terrain, figure out where the threats are. And Marcus's warning about the explosives? Either it's real and we disarm them, or it's fake and we waste 20 minutes checking. Either way, better safe than dead. They spent the next few hours gathering equipment, body armor from one of Adrian's caches, communication earpieces, a detailed map of the cemetery and surrounding area. Adrian marked potential sniper positions, escape routes, choke points where an ambush could happen. This is insane, Lila said for the 3rd time. We're walking into a trap with our eyes open. Sometimes the only way through is forward. That's not wisdom, that's stubbornness. In my experience, there's not much difference. Around midnight, Sarah called back. Her voice was tight with urgency. Adrian, we have a problem. The immunity deal just got leaked. I know. I leaked it. What? Why would you do that? To undermine Elena's credibility. Make her toxic to the public. Toxic to the prosecutors who need her. It's working. Twitter's on fire. The journalists are demanding answers. But there's blowback. The federal prosecutor handling the case just called me. They want to meet. With you? With whoever leaked the files. They're threatening obstruction charges, witness intimidation. This is serious, Adrian. Everything about this is serious. Tell them to get in line behind everyone else who wants me dead. He paused. Actually, set up the meeting tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Someplace public. Are you crazy? They'll arrest you on sight. Not if I'm already dead. Far as they know, I'm fish food in the Atlantic. Some anonymous source leaked those files. Could be anyone. They're not stupid, Adrian. Neither am I. Set up the meeting. I want to hear what they have to say. Sarah agreed reluctantly and hung up. Lila was watching Adrian with an expression caught between admiration and concern. You're actually going to walk into a meeting with federal prosecutors? Information gathering. They want to make a deal, which means they're worried. Worried people make mistakes. Or they make arrests. That's what the body armor's for. They tried to sleep in shifts, but neither of them managed more than an hour. Too much adrenaline, too much at stake. Around 4 a.m., Adrian gave up and started reviewing the USB drive files again, looking for anything he'd missed. He found it in the metadata of Elena's immunity agreement. The document had been created 3 weeks before the plane crash, but the first draft had been created 14 months ago. 14 months. Over a year of planning, over a year of Elena lying next to him, gathering evidence, building her escape route. Adrian thought about all the conversations they'd had in that time. Business discussions she'd seemed bored by. Personal moments he'd thought were genuine. All of it recorded, cataloged, weaponized. She's good, he said quietly. I'll give her that. She's better than I thought. Lila looked up from where she was cleaning her gun. Good at what? Betrayal? Good at survival. Most people in her position would have just run, filed for divorce, taken half, disappeared. But she saw an opportunity for more, and she took it. That requires vision. It also requires being a sociopath. Maybe. Or maybe it just requires being married to one. Adrian closed the laptop. I was never a good husband, too focused on the empire, on maintaining control. She was an accessory, like she said, something pretty to have at events. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, but it explains it. People don't betray you because they're evil. They betray you because you gave them a reason to want you gone. That's unusually philosophical for a man planning to destroy his enemies. I contain multitudes. Dawn came faster than either of them wanted. The meeting with the prosecutors was at 9, the funeral at 2. 6 hours to navigate a minefield and somehow come out alive. They drove to the meeting location, a coffee shop in a business district. Glass windows and too many witnesses for anyone to try anything obvious. Adrian wore a baseball cap and sunglasses, grew enough stubble that his face looked different from the photos the media was running. Not a perfect disguise, but enough to create doubt. The prosecutor was already there when they arrived. Woman in her 50s, sharp suit, eyes that had seen too many criminals walk free on technicalities. She introduced herself as Janet Reeves, and she didn't offer to shake hands. You're taking a risk being here, she said, stirring her coffee with mechanical precision. Life's a risk. Coffee's just coffee. Adrian sat across from her, Lila standing nearby, watching the street. You wanted to talk. I'm listening. The immunity deal you leaked was part of an active investigation. By making it public, you've compromised our case and potentially endangered our witness. Your witness betrayed her husband and is lying about being pregnant to manipulate public sympathy. Excuse me if I'm not crying into my coffee about her safety. Janet's expression didn't change. Adrian Voss is dead. So who exactly am I talking to? Call me interested party. Call me concerned citizen. Call me whatever makes you feel better about having this conversation. I could arrest you right now. You could try, but this is a public place. I'm armed, and my friend over there is very good at making exits. Adrian leaned back. Besides, you don't want to arrest me. You want to make a deal. What makes you think that? Because if you didn't, you wouldn't have agreed to this meeting. You'd have sent a SWAT team to wherever you thought I was hiding, but you're here, alone, which means you need something. Janet set down her coffee. Elena Voss's testimony is compromised now. The defense attorneys in our other cases are already filing motions, claiming witness tampering, questioning her credibility. Half our investigation is falling apart because you couldn't keep your ego in check. My ego's fine. My wife sleeping with my best friend while selling me out to the feds, that's what's in question. We need this investigation to stick. We've been building it for 18 months. Judges, cops, organized crime figures. This is the biggest corruption case in state history. If it falls apart because of your revenge fantasy, then maybe you shouldn't have built it on the testimony of someone with obvious credibility issues. Adrian pulled out his phone, showed her a photo from the USB drives. Elena and her lawyer boyfriend walking on the beach. She's already planning her exit, new identity, new life, new man. You really think she's going to stick around for years of trials and appeals? Janet looked at the photo for a long moment. Where did you get this? Elena was keeping insurance on everyone, including you. There are files documenting every deal you made, every promise of immunity, every corner you cut to build this case. You want them public? Because I can make that happen. That's blackmail. That's negotiation. I have information you need kept quiet. You have the power to make my problems with the law disappear. Seems like we could help each other. Janet's jaw tightened. What do you want? Elena's immunity deal gets revoked. You charge her with conspiracy, evidence tampering, whatever you can make stick. She goes down for what she did. We can't do that. She's our star witness. She's a liability who's about to disappear anyway, but I can give you something better. Adrian pulled out a USB drive, set it on the table. Complete financial records of Vincent Castellano's operations. Drug trafficking, money laundering, murder for hire. Everything you'd need to take down a major criminal organization, all documented and ready for prosecution. Vincent Castellano is part of our existing investigation. But you don't have this level of detail. You don't have his offshore accounts, his communications with foreign crime syndicates, his connections to corrupt officials. I do, and I'm giving it to you. Janet picked up the USB drive, turned it over in her fingers. And what do you get? Vincent goes to prison for life. Elena loses her immunity and faces charges, and I get to disappear without the federal government hunting me. Adrian stood. That's the deal. You've got until tomorrow morning to decide. After that, the offer expires and these files go public. He walked out before Janet could respond. Lila followed, and they didn't look back. Think she'll take it? Lila asked once they were in the car. She doesn't have a choice. Her case is falling apart, and I just handed her a lifeline. Prosecutors care about conviction rates more than justice. She'll take the deal. And Elena? Elena's about to learn that immunity only lasts as long as you're useful. They spent the next few hours preparing for the funeral. Adrian called Tommy and confirmed he'd have people positioned around the cemetery. Not fighters. Tommy wasn't stupid enough to start a war in broad daylight, but observers. People who could report if something went wrong. Sarah confirmed the asset transfers were complete. $18 million, now sitting in accounts Adrian could access from anywhere. Not enough to rebuild his empire, but enough to disappear if everything went sideways. At 1 p.m., they drove to the cemetery. Same one where the private service had been held. But this time there were hundreds of people, news cameras, mourners who'd probably never met Adrian but showed up because the story was sensational, and scattered throughout the crowd faces Adrian recognized from his organization. Vincent's people are everywhere, Lila said, scanning the crowd through binoculars. Rooftops, street corners, parked cars. If we wanted to start a war, this would be the place. We're not starting a war. We're ending one. Adrian checked his watch. Marcus said explosives. We need to sweep the area. They split up, moving through the cemetery grounds separately to avoid drawing attention. Adrian checked the chapel where the service would be held, looking for anything out of place. Chairs arranged in neat rows, flowers on the altar, a closed casket at the front. He wondered briefly who was inside. Some homeless person Vincent had paid off? A mannequin? Did it matter? He was checking under the podium when his phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Behind the old mausoleum, alone. Adrian considered ignoring it, considered that it was probably a trap. But curiosity won out over caution, which was either bravery or stupidity depending on who was telling the story. The old mausoleum was at the far edge of the cemetery, a stone structure from the 1800s, weathered and covered in moss. Adrian approached carefully, hand on his weapon, eyes scanning for threats. Marcus stepped out from behind the building, hands raised to show they were empty. You came. You asked me to. I wasn't sure you would, after everything. Marcus lowered his hands. Did you find them? Find what? The explosives. I wasn't lying about that part. Vincent rigged the chapel. Timer set to go off at 2:30, middle of the eulogy. Show me. Marcus led him back to the chapel, pointed to 3 spots under the floorboards where shaped charges had been placed. Professional work? Probably military grade. Enough to bring down the building and kill everyone inside. Why are you doing this? Adrian asked as he examined the explosives. Why help me? Because I'm trying to fix what I broke. Marcus crouched beside him. When I agreed to help Vincent, I thought we'd just push you out, force you to retire, take your money, disappear. I didn't think he'd actually kill you. You tried to blow me up. I set up a meeting I knew you'd be suspicious of. I wanted you paranoid enough to avoid it. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. I know how you think, Adrian. I know you trust your gut. I was counting on that. And if I hadn't, if I'd gone to meet Volkov, then I would have called you at the last minute, told you to turn around. I had a dozen backup plans, but you figured it out yourself, like I knew you would. Adrian wanted to believe him, wanted to think his brother had been playing both sides, trying to save them both. But trust was a broken thing between them now, shattered into pieces too small to glue back together. Vincent's planning to kill Elena too, Marcus said quietly. After the funeral, after he consolidates control. She knows too much, has too much leverage. He can't let her live. She's got federal protection. She's got a piece of paper. Vincent's got bullets. Which one do you think wins? Adrian started disarming the explosives, carefully removing detonators and cutting wires. If Marcus was lying, if this was somehow part of the trap, he'd find out soon enough. But the charges were real. The danger was real, and that meant at least part of Marcus's story was true. Where is Elena now? Adrian asked. Safe house on the waterfront. Vincent's people are watching it, but she doesn't know that. She thinks she's protected. And Vincent's plan? Make it look like rival gang violence. Russians, probably. Blame it on Volkov. Clean up all the loose ends at once. Adrian removed the last detonator, pocketed it. You realize telling me all this makes you a liability, too. I know. But I'm hoping you'll remember we're brothers before you remember I betrayed you. Brothers. Adrian stood, faced Marcus directly. You want to know what I remember about brothers? I remember when Dad came home drunk and I stepped in front of you so you wouldn't get hit. I remember working 3 jobs so you could finish school. I remember building this whole empire thinking I was making something we'd share. Adrian, and I remember you throwing it all away because you wanted to be the one in charge. Because my shadow was too heavy and you couldn't stand it anymore. Adrian's voice was cold, flat. So no, Marcus, I don't remember we're brothers. I remember we used to be. He walked away before Marcus could respond. Lila was waiting by the car, and from her expression, she'd seen the whole conversation from a distance. The explosives were real, Adrian said. Marcus disarmed them. So he's telling the truth? About trying to save you? About some things. Maybe. Adrian got in the car. Doesn't change what he did. Doesn't change that he made his choice. The funeral started at 2 p.m. exactly. Adrian and Lila watched from a distance, using the cameras and observers Tommy had positioned. The turnout was massive. Business associates, politicians, criminals, media. Everyone who was anyone gathered to mourn a man most of them had feared. Elena gave the eulogy. She wore black that looked expensive even from far away, and her voice broke in all the right places. She talked about love and loss and the child she was carrying, Adrian's legacy, his future that would never be. It was a hell of a performance. For a moment, even Adrian almost felt sorry for her. Then she started the second part, the part where she announced the Adrian Voss Foundation for Youth Education, funded by his estate, managed by a board including herself and Vincent Castellano, taking his money and making themselves look like heroes. That's bold, Lila said, stealing from a dead man and calling it charity. Wait for it. The reporters started asking questions. Someone had tipped them off. Adrian had made sure of it, and they were ready. Questions about the immunity deal, questions about her cooperation with federal prosecutors, questions about whether she'd betrayed her husband. Elena's composure cracked. Not much, just a flicker of panic in her eyes, a hesitation before she answered. But enough. Enough for the cameras to catch, enough for the news cycle to run with. Vincent tried to intervene, stepping up to the microphone, but the damage was done. The narrative had shifted from grieving widow to potential conspirator. By tomorrow, the headlines would be vicious. Phase 1 complete, Adrian said. Now for Phase 2. They waited until the crowd started dispersing, until people were moving to their cars. Attention scattered. Then Adrian made the call. Carlo Moroni answered on the first ring. We're in position. Vincent's in the black SUV, third from the entrance. Elena's in the town car behind it. I need them separated, not killed. Can you do that? Consider it done. What happened next happened fast. 3 cars blocked the cemetery exit, boxing in Vincent's SUV. Armed men stepped out, not pointing weapons but making their presence known. The Maroney family making a statement. At the same time, another group approached Elena's town car. The driver tried to pull away but found his tires slashed, air hissing out. Elena got out, heels clicking on pavement, and found herself face to face with Carlo Maroney himself. Adrian couldn't hear the conversation, but he could see Elena's face go pale, could see her realize she'd lost the protection she thought she had. Vincent's response was different. He came out of his SUV ready for war, hand on his weapon, bodyguards flanking him. But he was outnumbered 3-1, and even Vincent wasn't stupid enough to start a shootout in front of news cameras. "Stand down," Adrian heard Carlo say, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "This isn't your territory anymore. It's being redistributed." "The hell it is." Vincent's hand moved toward his gun. "Touch that weapon and you'll have 40 rounds in you before you clear the holster. Your choice." Vincent's hand stopped. His eyes scanned the crowd, looking for allies, finding none. Everyone who might have backed him was either watching from a safe distance or had already switched sides. "Who gave the order?" Vincent demanded. "Someone who actually earned their territory instead of stealing it from a dead man." Carlo gestured, and his people moved in, disarming Vincent's bodyguards, taking their weapons. "You're done, Castellano. You've got 24 hours to leave this city. After that, we start taking pieces." Vincent looked like he wanted to fight, wanted to rage and shoot and make them all pay. But he was smart enough to know when he'd lost. He got back in his SUV without another word, and his driver pulled away, tires squealing. Elena wasn't as lucky. Carlo's people escorted her to a different car, and she got in without protest. Adrian knew she'd be taken somewhere secure, somewhere she could be questioned about her plans, her files, her leverage. The Maroneys would want to know everything before they decided what to do with her. "That went smoother than expected," Lila said. "It's not over yet. Vincent won't just leave. He'll regroup, call in favors, try to strike back. So what do? We make sure he can't." Adrian made another call, this one to Janet Reeves. "Have you made a decision?" he asked. "I've reviewed the files you gave me. They're legitimate, admissible. And Elena Voss's immunity deal is being revoked as we speak. She'll be arrested within the hour on charges of conspiracy and obstruction of justice." "What about Vincent?" "Already have warrants being drafted. With the evidence you provided, we can connect him to 3 murders, multiple drug operations, and extensive money laundering. He's looking at life without parole." "Good. There's a condition, though. You don't get to walk away clean. You'll need to provide testimony, cooperate with our investigation." "As a dead man?" "As a confidential informant with protected status. You help us clean up this mess. We make sure you stay breathing long enough to do it." "I'll think about it." "Oh, don't think too long. This offer expires with the warrants." Adrian hung up and looked at Lila. "It's done. Vincent and Elena are both going down. The empire's being redistributed. Everything they planned for is collapsing." "And Marcus?" That was the question, wasn't it? Marcus, who'd betrayed him but maybe tried to save him. Marcus, who'd given him the information he needed but couldn't be fully trusted. "I don't know yet," Adrian admitted. "Part of me wants to forgive him. Part of me wants to put a bullet in him and be done with it." "What does the bigger part want?" "Time. Distance. A chance to figure out if we can ever be brothers again, or if that's just something I need to let go of." They drove away from the cemetery as police cars started arriving, as federal agents moved in to make arrests. Adrian's phone wouldn't stop buzzing with alerts. Elena in custody. Vincent's assets being frozen. The empire he'd built crumbling in real time. It should have felt like victory. Should have felt like justice. But all Adrian felt was tired. "Where do we go now?" Lila asked. "Somewhere they're not looking. Somewhere we can breathe. And after that?" "After that, we figure out what comes next. Build something new or burn what's left. I honestly don't know anymore." They drove through the city as the sun started setting, painting everything in shades of orange and red. The radio was playing news coverage of the arrests, reporters speculating about corruption and betrayal and the fall of a criminal empire. Adrian turned it off. He'd heard enough. His phone rang one more time. Marcus. Adrian almost didn't answer, almost let it ring through to voicemail, but something made him pick up. Yeah, I just heard about Elena and Vincent, the arrests. Good news travels fast. Did you do that? Set them up? I gave the prosecutors what they needed. They made their own choices. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What about me? Am I next? Adrian thought about that. Thought about all the ways he could hurt his brother, all the revenge he could take. Thought about the look on Marcus's face at the pier, tired and defeated and desperately trying to fix what he'd broken. You're my brother, Adrian said finally. That used to mean something. Maybe it still does. But I can't trust you anymore, Marcus. I can't work with you, can't build with you, so you're not next. You're just done. Adrian, find your own path. Make your own empire. But stay out of my way. That's the only mercy you're getting. He hung up before Marcus could respond. Lila reached over, put her hand on his arm. That was the right call. Was it? Because it doesn't feel right. It just feels empty. Most things do at the end, but you're still alive. We both are. That's more than Vincent or Elena can say right now. Adrian drove them out of the city, past the suburbs, into rural areas where the air smelled like trees instead of exhaust. They found a motel that didn't ask questions, paid cash for a room, and finally let themselves rest. Tomorrow they'd figure out next steps. Tomorrow they'd start building whatever came after the fall. But tonight, they were just two people who'd survived something that should have killed them, trying to remember what that felt like. Thank you, Adrian said quietly, for warning me that first night, for saving my life when you had every reason to let me die. I didn't do it for you, Lila said. I did it because I wanted to be better than the people who raised me. Wanted to prove I could make my own choices instead of following orders. How's that working out? Still alive, so pretty well, I think. They sat in silence as darkness fell completely. Two broken people in a broken world, holding on to the only thing they had left, each other and the slim hope that survival might eventually turn into something worth living for. Morning came with news that felt like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. Adrian sat in the motel room with coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, scrolling through headlines on a burner phone. Federal raid nets dozens in corruption sweep. Widow's immunity revoked in shocking reversal. Castellano Empire crumbles as arrests mount. Lila was still asleep, curled up in the other bed, her gun on the nightstand within easy reach, even in rest. Adrian envied that ability to actually sleep. He'd managed maybe 2 hours, plagued by dreams of his brother's face and Elena's voice and the weight of an empire turning to dust. His phone buzzed. Tommy. Boss, you seeing this? I'm seeing it. Vincent's gone to ground. Nobody's seen him since yesterday. His people are scrambling, trying to figure out who's still loyal and who's jumping ship. What about the feds? They find him? Not yet. But they've got warrants out, assets frozen, the whole deal. He's got nowhere to run that they won't eventually find him. Unless he runs somewhere they won't look. Adrian stood, moved to the window. The parking lot was empty except for 3 cars and a stray dog nosing through garbage. Vincent's smart. He'll have an exit strategy. You think he'll leave the country? I think he'll try. Question is whether we let him. Tommy was quiet for a moment. You want him caught or you want him dead? I want him to face what he did. Prison's worse than death for men like Vincent. Death's quick, over. Prison is decades of losing day after day, knowing you threw everything away for nothing. That's dark, boss. That's justice. They talked for another 10 minutes, Tommy updating him on who was still loyal, who'd flipped, who was smart enough to disappear before the feds came knocking. The organization Adrian had spent 20 years building was fragmenting, pieces being absorbed by other crews or going independent. By next week, there wouldn't be anything left to recognize. Lila woke around 8, stretching like a cat and immediately reaching for her weapon before remembering where she was. Muscle memory from too many years of sleeping in dangerous places. Any news? She asked, voice rough with sleep. Vincent's running. Elena's in federal custody. Marcus hasn't been heard from since last night. So basically everything's chaos. Basically. She got up, disappeared into the bathroom. Adrian heard water running, the sounds of someone trying to wash away the previous day. When she emerged 20 minutes later, she looked more human but no less exhausted. "What's the plan?" she asked. "We wait. See how the pieces fall. Then we decide what comes next." "That's not much of a plan. It's all I've got right now." They grabbed breakfast at a diner 3 miles down the road, the kind of place where truckers stopped and nobody asked questions about the couple in the corner booth who looked like they'd been through a war. Adrian ordered eggs he didn't eat. Lila got through half a stack of pancakes before giving up. "I've been thinking," she said, pushing her plate away, "about what you said last night, about building something new."
Yeah, but not now.
What would that even look like? You can't go back to what you were. The feds are watching. Your organization's scattered. Half the city thinks you're dead. Maybe being dead isn't the worst thing. Fresh start, new identity, somewhere they're not looking. You'd really walk away? Just leave it all behind? Adrian thought about that. Thought about the empire he'd built, the power he'd accumulated, the fear and respect his name used to command. All of it meant nothing now. All of it had been built on foundations that crumbled the moment the people closest to him decided he was worth more dead than alive. "I don't know if I'd call it walking away," he said slowly. "More like surviving. You can't hold on to ashes. They just slip through your fingers." His phone rang before Lila could respond. Unknown number, which meant either trouble or opportunity, sometimes both. "Yeah. Mr. Voss?" Janet Reeves's voice, crisp and professional. "We need to talk." "I thought we already did that." "Circumstances have changed. Vincent Castellano didn't go quietly like we expected. He's made contact with foreign assets, apparently planning to flee the country. We need your help finding him." "Why would I help you? Our deal was information for protection. I gave you the files. Job's done." "The deal was cooperation. Finding Castellano is part of that cooperation." "Sounds like your problem, not mine. It becomes your problem when he starts making calls to eliminate loose ends. And right now, Mr. Voss, you're the loosest end there is." Janet paused. "He's put a price on your head. $500,000 to whoever delivers proof you're dead. Word's already spreading through certain channels." Adrian felt ice settle in his chest. "How do you know this?" "We've got surveillance on some of his known associates, intercepted communications. He's desperate, angry, and willing to spend whatever it takes to hurt you before he disappears." "So what do you want from me?" "Help us find him before he finds you. You know how he thinks, where he'd run, who he'd reach out to. We need that insight." "And if I don't?" "Then you spend the rest of your probably very short life looking over your shoulder while we try to catch a ghost." Adrian hung up and looked at Lila. "Vincent put a bounty on me." "How much?" $500,000. She whistled low. "That's a lot of money for a dead man." "He's desperate. Desperate men make stupid decisions. Or very dangerous ones." They left the diner and drove aimlessly for an hour, Adrian thinking through angles and options. Vincent would need money to run, which meant accessing accounts the feds hadn't frozen yet. He'd need transportation, probably private, nothing that required ID or background checks. And he'd need allies who weren't scared of federal prosecution. That narrowed the field considerably. "Volkov," Adrian said suddenly. Vincent would go to Volkov. The Russians got resources, connections, and he's already invested in Vincent's success. The feds would be watching Volkov. They would. But Volkov's got diplomatic immunity through his business connections. He can move freely, meet with whoever he wants. If Vincent's smart, he'd use that. Adrian called Sarah. She answered on the second ring, sounding harried. "Adrian, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all morning." "What's wrong?" "Everything. The Fed seized most of your liquid assets. I managed to protect the offshore accounts we moved yesterday. But anything in your name or linked to your companies is gone. You're basically broke." "I've got 18 million hidden. That's not broke." "It is when you're trying to rebuild an empire. That's barely operating capital." "Then it's a good thing I'm not rebuilding." Adrian pulled over to the side of the road, put the car in park. "Sarah, I need you to do something for me. It's risky and probably illegal." "Most of what I do for you fits that description. What do you need?" "Access to Dmitry Volkov's financial records, specifically any large transfers in the last 48 hours. "You think Vincent's with Volkov?" "I think Vincent needs money, and Volkov's one of the few people with both the resources and the motivation to help him. If they've made a deal, there'll be a paper trail. That kind of information is locked down tight. I'd need to hack into. I didn't say it would be easy. Can you do it? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Give me 4 hours. Maybe 6. I'll need to route through some overseas servers, make it look like the hack's coming from somewhere else. Do it. And Sarah, be careful. If Volkov catches wind someone's digging into his finances, he won't respond kindly. Kindness and I parted ways when I agreed to work for you. She hung up. Adrian sat there, engine idling, trying to think 3 steps ahead. Vincent with Volkov meant access to international resources, meant the ability to disappear into countries that didn't extradite, to live comfortably while Adrian and everyone else who'd wronged him faced consequences. That couldn't happen. We need to find them before Sarah gets back to us, Adrian said. Narrow down the possibilities. How? Volkov's got properties all over the city. But he's got preferences, places he feels safe, places with security he controls. Adrian pulled out his laptop, started searching. 3 years ago, I tracked his movements for a month, figured out his patterns. There's a hotel he uses for private meetings. The Monarch, downtown. Russian-owned, guards on every floor, cameras everywhere. So basically a fortress. Basically. But Vincent's not there for security. He's there to negotiate. And negotiations take time. They drove back into the city, Adrian taking side streets and avoiding main roads where traffic cameras might catch his face. The Monarch Hotel was exactly what it sounded like. Expensive, exclusive, the kind of place where royalty stayed when they were slumming it. Adrian had been there twice, both times for meetings that required absolute discretion. The hotel was 42 stories of glass and steel, with a lobby that looked like someone had melted down a bank vault and turned it into furniture. Lila whistled when she saw it. We're not exactly dressed for this place. We're not going through the front door. Adrian parked 3 blocks away and led them through a service alley that connected to the hotel's loading dock. He'd used this entrance before, back when he was still alive officially, and meeting with people who preferred not to be seen with him. The loading dock was busy with deliveries, staff moving carts and boxes, nobody paying attention to 2 more people in dark clothes who looked like they belonged. Adrian and Lila slipped inside, took the service elevator to the 38th floor where Volkov kept a permanent suite. How do you know he's here? Lila whispered as they moved down the hallway. I don't. But if Vincent's in the city and needs Volkov's help, this is where they'd meet. The hallway was empty, thick carpet muffling their footsteps. Volkov's suite was at the end, door marked only with a number. Adrian pressed his ear against it, listening. Voices. 2 men speaking Russian, too muffled to make out words. Then a third voice. American accent, angry. Vincent. Adrian looked at Lila. She already had her gun out, safety off. He pulled his own weapon and tried the door handle. Locked, but not deadbolted. Cheap lock for an expensive hotel, probably because Volkov relied on guards more than hardware. It took Adrian 30 seconds to pick it. The door swung open silently. The suite beyond was exactly what he expected. Expensive furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, art that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Dmitry Volkov sat in a leather chair that looked like a throne, cigarette in one hand, glass of vodka in the other. 2 bodyguards flanked him, both armed, and Vincent stood in the center of the room, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 2 days. Everyone froze when Adrian walked in. Well, Volkov said in accented English, not bothering to stand. This is unexpected. The dead man walks. Surprised? Adrian kept his gun trained on the nearest bodyguard. Lila had the other one covered. Disappointed, actually. Vincent here has been telling me you were fish food. I was already planning how to carve up your territories. Volkov took a drag on his cigarette. But here you are, very much alive, and very much armed in my private suite. I'm looking for closure. Call it a therapy session. Vincent's hand moved toward his waist. Adrian's gun shifted to point at his chest. Don't, Adrian said quietly. I've had a really bad week, Vincent. Don't make it worse. Vincent's hand stopped moving. You can't win this, Adrian. Even if you kill me, you're outnumbered. Volkov's guards will cut you down before you reach the door. Maybe. But you'll still be dead, and honestly, that might be enough. Volkov laughed, a dry sound like sandpaper on wood. I like this. American drama, very entertaining, but let's be practical, yes? You want Vincent. I want my investment protected. Perhaps we make a deal. What kind of deal? I give you Vincent. You walk away, tell no one I was involved. Everyone wins except him. Volkov gestured at Vincent with his vodka glass. He is becoming liability anyway. FBI watching, assets frozen, bounties on heads. Too much attention. Vincent turned on Volkov. You're selling me out? After everything I promised you? You promised territories you don't control. Money you don't have. I am businessman, Vincent. I don't keep bad investments. You son of a... Vincent's hand went for his gun. Adrian fired first, catching him in the shoulder. Vincent spun, went down hard, his weapon clattering across the expensive hardwood floor. Volkov's bodyguards didn't move. They stood there, guns drawn but not aimed, waiting for their boss's signal. Volkov himself just took another sip of vodka, watching the scene play out like it was dinner theater. Adrian moved to where Vincent lay bleeding, kicked his gun further away. You put a bounty on me, $500,000. Should have made it more, Vincent gasped. Should have made it enough to bring out everyone who ever hated you. Everyone who hates me is either dead or in prison. You're about to join them. Adrian pressed his gun against Vincent's good shoulder. Where's Elena? Rotting in federal custody, last I heard. You were planning to kill her, Marcus told me. Vincent laughed, then coughed blood. Marcus told you a lot of things. Some of them were even true. Which ones weren't? Figure it out yourself. You're the genius who built an empire. Or was that me? I forget who did what anymore. Adrian felt his finger tighten on the trigger. It would be so easy. One shot, Vincent gone, problem solved. Justice served in lead and powder and the satisfying physics of cause and effect. But Lila's voice cut through his anger. Don't. He looked at her. She had her gun still trained on Volkov's guards, but her eyes were on Adrian. Don't give him the easy way out, she said. Let him rot in prison. Let him lose everything slowly, piece by piece. That's what he deserves. She was right. She was absolutely right. Death was mercy Vincent didn't deserve. Adrian lowered his gun. Call 911. Tell them there's been a shooting. Send an ambulance. You're letting him live? Volkov asked, sounding genuinely surprised. I'm letting him survive. There's a difference. Adrian stood, stepped back from Vincent. The feds want him. They can have him. He'll spend the next 30 years in a cell thinking about what he lost. Vincent tried to say something, but he was losing too much blood, consciousness fading. Adrian watched him go under with something that felt less like satisfaction and more like exhaustion. Volkov's bodyguards moved to apply pressure to Vincent's wound. Volkov himself stood, adjusted his suit jacket. You have made interesting choice, he said. Most men would have killed, but you choose suffering instead. This is why you built empire. You understand pain is better teacher than death. I understand Vincent's not worth the bullet, that's all. And what of me? You have seen my involvement. You know I helped him plan against you. You're a businessman doing business. I can't fault you for that. Adrian started backing toward the door, Lila moving with him. But stay out of my territories. Whatever deal you had with Vincent is done. But I have no territories here anymore. FBI has made city too hot for my operations. I will move elsewhere, find easier markets. Volkov raised his vodka in a mock toast. But perhaps we meet again, Adrian Voss, in another city, another life. Let's hope not. They left before the ambulance arrived, taking the service elevator down and disappearing into the city. Adrian's hands were shaking, adrenaline finally catching up with him. He'd been so close to killing Vincent, so close to throwing away Lila's wisdom for the temporary satisfaction of revenge. Thank you, he said once they were back in the car, for stopping me. I didn't stop you. I just reminded you who you wanted to be. They drove to a different motel, this one even cheaper than the last. Adrian's phone was blowing up with news alerts. Vincent Castellano arrested at downtown hotel. Critical condition, expected to survive. Federal prosecutors preparing charges. The empire's fall was complete now. All the major players either dead, arrested, or scattered. Sarah called around 7 that evening. I got into Volkov's accounts, she said. You were right. Vincent was there. Volkov paid him 2 million euros 4 hours ago, probably for information or connections. Doesn't matter now. Vincent's in custody. I heard. Also heard you were there when it happened. News travels fast. Adrian, the feds are asking about you. Janet Reeves called me directly. Wanted to know if I'd heard from you. They know you're alive. Let them know. I'm done hiding. Are you sure? Because once they have you on record, once they know you're cooperating, you can't take it back. I'm sure. Set up a meeting with Reeves tomorrow morning. I'll give them whatever they need to close their cases. And after that? After that, I figure out what comes next. He hung up and looked at Lila. Last chance to walk away. Once I start cooperating with the feds, anyone associated with me becomes a target. You could disappear, start over somewhere clean. And miss the exciting conclusion? Not a chance. She smiled, and it was the first real smile he'd seen from her. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't do anything stupid. Bit late for that. I've been doing stupid things for years. Then it's time to start doing smart ones. The meeting with Janet Reeves happened in a nondescript office building, the kind of place the government rented when they needed to interview witnesses quietly. Adrian walked in without disguise, without pretense, just himself and Lila and the weight of everything he was about to confess. Reeves was there with 2 other prosecutors and a court stenographer. They spent 6 hours going through everything: the organization's structure, the corrupt officials, the money trails, the bodies. Adrian told them all of it, holding nothing back. Every crime, every deal, every decision that had seemed so justified in the moment and looked so ugly in retrospect. When it was done, when he'd signed the last document and initialed the last page, Reeves leaned back in her chair. You realize what you've just done? The number of cases you've just blown open? I realize I'm probably going to die in witness protection. Yeah. We can keep you safe. No offense, but I've heard that before. People promise me safety, loyalty, partnership. Look how that turned out. This is different. This is official. Official just means the betrayal comes with paperwork. Reeves almost smiled. You're a cynic, Mr. Voss. I'm a realist. There's a difference. They released him 4 hours later with instructions to stay available, stay in contact, stay alive. Adrian and Lila walked out into evening air that smelled like rain and new beginnings. What now? Lila asked. Now we find somewhere quiet, somewhere they're not looking, somewhere we can breathe. They drove west, leaving the city behind. Adrian's phone rang one more time as they crossed the county line. Marcus. He almost didn't answer, almost let it ring through, let his brother disappear into whatever future he'd make without Adrian in it. But something made him pick up. Yeah. I heard about Vincent, about you turning evidence. Good news travels fast, bad news travels faster. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for all of it, for thinking I deserved what you built, for letting ambition make me stupid. Adrian watched the city lights fade in his rearview mirror. You were right, though, about one thing. I did take all the credit. I did keep you in my shadow. I didn't mean to, but I did. That doesn't excuse what I did. No, but it explains it. Adrian paused. What are you going to do now? Start over, somewhere else. Try to build something honest instead of something dirty. Marcus's voice cracked. Maybe try to be the man our mother thought I could be instead of the man our father was. That's a good plan. Adrian, do you think, could we ever be brothers again? Adrian finished. I don't know, Marcus. Maybe. Someday. But not now. Not while everything's still bleeding. I understand. Take care of yourself, little brother. You too. Adrian hung up and drove on. Leela was quiet beside him, respecting the weight of the conversation. After 20 minutes, she spoke. You think you'll ever forgive him? I think time makes everything look different. What seems unforgivable now might look like just human stupidity in 10 years. Or it might look worse. I honestly don't know. They stopped at a roadside motel in a town so small it didn't have a traffic light. Adrian paid cash for a room and they sat on the bed, watching the news coverage of everything that had fallen apart. Elena had been denied bail, facing 37 counts of conspiracy and obstruction. The pregnancy announcement had been exposed as a lie, just another manipulation. Her lawyer boyfriend had been disbarred for ethics violations. Everything she'd planned, every carefully constructed lie, had collapsed under the weight of her own ambition. Vincent was recovering under federal guard, facing charges that would keep him in prison for multiple lifetimes. His empire was being carved up by the Maronis and other crews, redistributed among people who'd actually earned their territories through loyalty and blood. The corrupt officials on Elena's insurance list were being arrested one by one, a cascade of prosecutions that would reshape law enforcement in 3 states. Judges, cops, prosecutors, all of them falling because they'd thought they were too important to face consequences. And Adrian Voss, officially declared alive after 3 days of being dead, was cooperating with federal prosecutors in exchange for immunity and witness protection. The news called it the fall of an empire. Adrian called it the end of something that should have ended years ago. "What do you want to build now?" Lila asked quietly. "Now that the old empire's gone?" Adrian thought about that. Thought about the 18 million in offshore accounts. Enough to start over, but not enough to recreate what he'd lost. Thought about the skills he had, the knowledge, the understanding of how power worked and how to accumulate it. "Something smaller," he said finally. "Something that doesn't require an army to protect or constant vigilance to maintain. Something I can walk away from without everything collapsing." "That doesn't sound like you." "Maybe the old me, but that person died in a plane crash, remember? I'm someone new now, still figuring out what that means." "Want company while you figure it out?" He looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd been sent to kill him, who'd chosen to save him instead, who'd stood beside him through everything that followed. She was damaged, dangerous, and probably the only person in the world who actually understood what he was going through. "Yeah," he said, "I'd like that." They spent the next week moving from place to place, always one step ahead of anyone who might come looking. Adrian used his contacts to set up new identities, new documents, new lives. It cost a chunk of the 18 million, but money only mattered if you were alive to spend it. Sarah helped, creating digital footprints that led nowhere, bank accounts that couldn't be traced, a whole infrastructure of invisibility. She was good at her job, always had been. Adrian made sure she got paid well for it. Tommy took over what was left of the West Coast operations, restructuring them into legitimate businesses that could actually survive scrutiny. He called Adrian once to say thank you, once to say goodbye. They both knew they wouldn't talk again. Some chapters closed permanently. Carlo Moroni sent a message through intermediaries. Lila was welcome back in the family if she wanted, but there would be questions and expectations. She sent back a polite decline. Some bridges needed to stay burned. A month after everything fell apart, Adrian and Lila were sitting in a small apartment in a city neither of them had ever been to, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise. The news had moved on to other scandals, other falls from grace. The Voss Empire was already becoming history, something people would reference when talking about corruption and betrayal, but wouldn't really remember the details of. "I've been thinking," Lila said, "about what my Uncle Carlo used to say, that the best revenge is living well." Sounds like something someone says when they can't get actual revenge. Maybe. But maybe there's truth in it too. Vincent's in prison. Elena's facing decades of charges. Marcus is starting over with nothing. They all lost everything they schemed for. And I lost everything I built. But you're still here, still breathing, still able to choose what comes next. She set down her coffee. "That's winning, Adrian. Maybe not the way you wanted, but it's still winning." He thought about that. Thought about the empire he'd built and lost, the people he'd trusted who'd betrayed him, the brother he might never speak to again. All of it hurt. All of it left scars that would probably never fully heal, but he was alive. And Lila was right. That counted for something. "So what comes next?" he asked. "For you, I mean. You've been following my lead for weeks. What do you actually want?" Lila was quiet for a long moment. "I want to stop running. Want to find a place that feels like home instead of just another safe house. Want to do something that matters instead of just surviving." "That's a tall order." "Yeah, well, I've always been ambitious." Adrian smiled. It felt strange on his face, like a muscle he'd forgotten how to use. "We could do that. Find a place, put down roots, start something legitimate." "What kind of something?" "I don't know. Security consulting? I know a thing or two about protecting assets. Or maybe just a quiet business that doesn't attract attention. Coffee shop, bookstore. Something normal people do." "You'd die of boredom in a week." "Probably. But it might be nice to try." They sat there as the sun climbed higher, painting the unfamiliar city in shades of gold and promise. Somewhere out there, Vincent was in a cell. Elena was facing trial. Marcus was trying to rebuild. The empire was ashes, and Adrian Voss, the man everyone thought was dead, was finally figuring out how to live. It wasn't the ending he'd imagined, wasn't the victory he'd planned for, or the revenge he'd fantasized about. It was messier than that, more complicated, full of loose ends and unresolved feelings. But it was his, and that made it enough. "You know what the funny thing is?" Adrian said. "I spent 20 years building power, accumulating control, making sure I'd never be vulnerable again, and it was all built on sand. The moment people decided I was worth more dead than alive, the whole thing collapsed. So what's the lesson? That power built on fear doesn't last. That loyalty bought with money isn't really loyalty. That the only thing you can really trust is—" He paused, trying to find the right words. "Is the choice to keep going when everything's telling you to quit." That's almost philosophical. Don't tell anyone. I've got a reputation to maintain. You're supposed to be dead, remember? No reputation to maintain. Good point. Lila's phone buzzed. She checked it, then showed Adrian the screen. News alert. Castellano trial date set. Prosecution expects life sentence. "They're going to bury him," she said. "Good. He earned it." Another alert came through. Elena Voss plea deal rejected. Prosecutors pushing for maximum sentence. She's getting what she deserves too," Lila said. Yeah. Adrian felt something that might have been satisfaction or might have been just exhaustion. Strange how justice actually happening feels anticlimactic. You spend all this time wanting revenge, planning for it, and when it finally comes, it's just paperwork and court dates. Maybe that's what justice is. Not the dramatic explosion, just the slow bureaucratic grinding of consequences. You're getting philosophical too. Must be contagious. They spent the rest of the day planning their actual future. Not the next week or the next safe house, but the next year, the next decade. Places they might settle, businesses they might start, lives they might build that didn't require looking over their shoulders constantly. It felt strange, planning for normalcy. Adrian had spent so long operating in the shadows, making decisions that affected hundreds of people, that the idea of just existing seemed almost foreign. But foreign didn't mean bad, just different. His phone rang one last time. Janet Reeves. "Mr. Voss, wanted to update you on the cases." "I'm listening." "Vincent Castellano has agreed to a plea deal. Life in prison without parole in exchange for testimony against his remaining associates. He'll spend the rest of his life in a supermax facility." "And Elena?" "Her trial starts in 3 months. With the evidence we have, including your testimony, we're confident in a conviction. She's looking at minimum 30 years, probably more." "What about the corruption cases? The officials on her list?" 14 indictments so far, more coming. This is the biggest cleanup of law enforcement corruption in state history. You helped make that happen." "I helped create it too. Don't forget that part." "I haven't, but you're also helping fix it. That counts for something." Reeves paused. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Cooperation over revenge. Justice over murder. Jury's still out on that one. Give it time. These things have a way of looking better in retrospect." She hung up. Adrian set the phone down and looked at Lila. "It's really over," he said. "Vincent's going to prison. Elena's going to trial. Everyone who betrayed me is facing consequences." "How does it feel?" "Empty. Like I should feel triumphant or satisfied, but mostly I just feel tired. That's because revenge doesn't actually fix anything. It just trades one kind of pain for another." "When did you get so wise?" "When I stopped following orders and started making my own choices. Turns out thinking for yourself teaches you things." They sat in comfortable silence as the day wore on. Outside, the city moved through its rhythms, people going about their lives unaware that a man who'd built and lost an empire was sitting in a modest apartment above a bodega, trying to figure out how to be normal. Evening brought one final call. Marcus. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he said without preamble. "Heading west, starting completely over." "Good luck with that." "Adrian, I know you said maybe someday we could be brothers again. I just wanted you to know that I'm going to try to become someone worthy of that, someone you could actually be proud of. I was proud of you once, long time ago before everything got complicated." "Think you could be again?" Adrian thought about his brother. Thought about the kid who'd followed him around, the teenager who'd stood beside him, the man who'd betrayed him. All the different versions of Marcus, all the choices that had led them here. Yeah, he said finally. I think maybe I could, but it'll take time. I've got nothing but time now. Then use it well. I will. And Adrian, thank you for not killing me when you had the chance, for giving me the space to figure out who I want to be. Don't thank me. Thank Lila. She's the one who keeps reminding me that mercy's stronger than revenge. They said goodbye, and this time it felt final in a different way. Not an ending, but a pause. A bookmark in a story that might continue someday or might just stay closed. Either way was okay. That was good of you, Lila said, giving him hope. I gave him truth. Whether he makes it into hope is up to him. The sun set on their first day of whatever came next. Adrian and Lila sat on the apartment's small balcony, watching the city lights come on one by one, and for the first time in weeks, Adrian felt something like peace. It was fragile, tentative, the kind of peace that could shatter with the wrong phone call or the right threat. But it was there, and that was more than he'd had when this all started. You know what the real victory is, Lila said quietly. Not that Vincent's in prison or Elena's facing trial. It's that you're here, alive, making your own choices instead of following someone else's script. Pretty modest victory for a man who used to run an empire. Maybe, but empires fall. People who learn to adapt, they survive. Is that what we're doing? Adapting? I like to think we're evolving, becoming better versions of ourselves. I've been a lot of versions. Not sure which one is better. The one that's still breathing and trying to do right. That's the better version. Adrian looked at her, this woman who'd saved him when she could have killed him, who'd stood beside him through chaos and betrayal, who was choosing to build a future instead of running from the past. He'd built his empire on fear and control, on making sure he was always 3 steps ahead and twice as dangerous as anyone who might challenge him. But maybe that wasn't the only way to build something that lasted. Maybe strength came from different places than he'd thought. Maybe the quiet choice to keep going, to try again, to believe in tomorrow even when yesterday had destroyed you, maybe that was the real power. Okay, he said. Let's do it. Let's build something new. Something that doesn't require an army to protect or constant vigilance to maintain. Something we can actually enjoy instead of just surviving. What did you have in mind? I don't know yet, but we've got time to figure it out. They sat there as night fell completely. 2 damaged people in a strange city, holding on to each other and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the best parts of their lives were still ahead of them. The empire was gone. The revenge was complete. The betrayers were facing justice, and Adrian Voss, the man who died and come back, was finally learning how to live. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't what he'd planned, but it was real. It was his, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, that was enough. Somewhere in the city, a clock struck midnight. A new day beginning, and with it, a new chapter in a story that had started with betrayal and ended with something that looked almost like hope. Not the ending Adrian had imagined when he'd walked into his mansion expecting silence and found conspiracy instead. But maybe that was the point. Life didn't follow scripts. It didn't give you the endings you wanted, just the ones you earned. And Adrian had earned this. The quiet apartment, the fresh start. The woman beside him who understood what it meant to choose differently, to be better, to survive and keep surviving until survival turned into something worth calling a life. Tomorrow, Lila said, we start fresh. New identities, new city, new everything. Tomorrow, Adrian agreed. But tonight, we rest. Sounds good to me. They went inside as the city hummed below them, unaware and uncaring that one of its former kings had fallen and risen and was now just another person trying to find their way. The story would become legend eventually, the tale of the dead man who walked into his own funeral and destroyed everyone who'd betrayed him. But legends were for other people to tell. Adrian was done being a story. He was ready to just be a person, and that in the end was the real victory. Not destroying his enemies, though he'd done that. Not surviving against impossible odds, though he'd done that too. But choosing to be human instead of powerful, to be present instead of feared, to build connections instead of empires. The world would keep turning. Vincent would rot in prison. Elena would face her trial. Marcus would try to rebuild. And Adrian would wake up tomorrow in a city where nobody knew his name, beside a woman who'd chosen to save him instead of kill him, and figure out what the hell came next. It was messy and uncertain and absolutely nothing like he'd planned. It was perfect.